Switching sources. I don't know what the hell is going on, but it's all good.
We're talking about the different sources. Yeah. It's like, oh, really? There's a different source out there? Let's check into that. Is it an external source? What?
Very convenient. Yeah. Alrighty, let's head back into it. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We are continuing on with Wayne Bush and our series. Let's see. Oh, just one moment. Sorry about that. Okay, is that working? All right, okay. All right, thank you for your patience. Sorry, I didn't mean to click that, but I did. Okay. All right, Wayne. So, yeah, thank you everyone for your patience and hanging in there with us. And where are we headed next? Aliens? We're
just going to finish up the near-death stuff, and then okay. I don't think the aliens and DMT will be that long. I think they might both be like a half an hour each, or the aliens might be a little longer than DMT, but we can maybe do those in an hour or so.
Yeah, sure.
We don't have much left on this, but the NDE stuff is so important, and same thing with the OBE'S. A lot of material to cover through there. The DMTs, we don't even have to do that one actually, but the aliens is also important.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about them is that they crisscross with one another and have those same pattern data sets. So that's important. I mean, it's helpful to anyone out there who's trying to prove the matrix reincarnation soul trap to themselves, or for their own research purposes. So however you want to go about it's cool. I just think it's important just to at least make sure that it's known that they cross over, because it's crazy that they do, but it's not at the same time.
Yeah, there's some definite differences between NDEs and DMTs, but there are similarities too. And the aliens, there's a lot of crossover, obviously, but so the free will, I had written at least half the experiencers say they were forced to come back against their will, and probably half of those who chose to come back were persuaded into choosing to do so after seeing images of their loved ones needing them. Thus they have an attachment. And the light also tells them they have a mission to perform first, or even asks them to do it as a favor. And in many cases, the spirit's thoughts are redirected to Earth, and off they go. And some examples of this, Rena P. said, up to this day, I can't recall if after looking downwards, the decision to return was completely mine or forced to me by an outside voice that didn't belong. Barbara G. It was like being paroled from hell and then being forced to return. Geraldine, it was not my choice. I was forced to go back. I did not want to. It was made by that main light source. Stephen R. They asked me if I wanted to stay with them or if I wanted to come back to Earth. Because everything there was so overwhelmingly wonderful and beautiful, I asked to stay with them. It wasn't until years later, after I realized what happened to me had a name, near-death experience, and that what happened to me was real, not a dream, that I remembered then that they sent me back against my will. Then I was really mad. Why did they make me come back when I wanted to stay? I felt controlled. Why did they ask me if the decision wasn't really mine? Ooh, I was so mad. So that kind of shows you, like, they're asking if you want to come back. And if you say, yeah, well, then cool. It's all, I mean, but if you say no, then they start the manipulation, or they roll out the red carpet. They just push you back, here's this account of Miguel RP. I read it yesterday, but it's, so important. And this is NDE. Maybe not everybody's listening to everything. So this is when I was called and returned to the blue place in which I'd started, where the angel Gabriel said to me, Miguel, you have to go back. There is a mission for you to accomplish. I said to him, no, brother, I'm not going back. I'm here now, and I'm not about to move from here. I'm not leaving. He said, you have a wife and children. I replied that I did not remember them, and he made a gesture with his hand, and a seated woman appeared on a kind of white chair, praying and weeping, holding my diary in her hands. I drew near, saw her, and said to the angel, now I remember her. She is my wife. He asked me if I wanted to see my children, and I said yes. And with another gesture of the hands, he took me to a really poor district with unpaved streets and mud. I was taken near a bus stop where there were gray concrete storm drains. We came to a house under construction or unfinished. The floor was of earth. The walls had no covering. The bath also half finished. And on the patio, 2 children playing covered in mud. Following another gesture, I approached them and could see that, yes, I recognized them. They are my children. The angel said, you have to go back, to which I replied, no way. Now that I'm here, I'm not going back there. I said, what if the next time I don't end up in this place? Better to stay for good. No point getting here if I'm going to leave. At this moment, I heard a strong, loud voice speaking in a very special way with love, affection, but also with authority, which said to me, Miguel, you must go back. I looked all around me, up, down, left, and right, but no one had spoken to me. Then I asked, who is speaking to me? And I again heard this voice saying to me, I am the true and faithful witness. You have to go back. I said, Jesus? And he answered, yes, you must go back. I said, get this, he does a 180 flip. I said, I'm ready, Lord, thy will be done. They just try these different angles, and once they find which button to push,
which one hits, yep. Which one do they connect with? Boom, it's done. Wow, that was a really good one.
It is a good one.
Wow.
R said, this soul was told they're the only one that could do whatever was needed to be done. He said, why me? I said, it said to me with a sad reply, you're the only one that I have found strong enough to deal with this pain. You share the same feelings that I have felt, the feeling of loneliness, the feeling of being not noticed. That's why I have chosen you. From here on out, you will never forget this moment, and others will never realize the true meaning to life. Only you will understand life, and only you can hold my existence. Is that not a load of crap or what, man?
Lord.
Holy cow, man.
Wow.
Stephen L.
Wow.
Yeah, here's another person who told nothing, no one else could do what needed to be done. He said, I asked and I said, I'd like to stay. They said, maybe another time, but not now. You have a mission to do on the earth and you must do it. No one else can do it but you. I thought about it and said, okay, I'll do it. My mission is basically to share my story down here on earth, to tell everybody they are loved too. He's the only one that can do it. There's millions of ears being sent back. We talked about the numbers at the beginning, 34 million or whatever it was. But he's the only one that can share that story.
Let's, Wayne, we should check in with him and see where he's at today. How's he making on that progress?
Right.
I mean, what is the progress? What is he exactly supposed to do?
Right.
I mean, it's just endless questions, and just we all know at the end of the day, it's all horse shit. But
Carmel said this person was asked if they would come back as a favor. I'm sorry, that's like how I set it up. This person was asked if they would come back as a favor, and Carmel said, he asked me if I would do favor for them by carrying on the energy work I had been doing. I agreed. Mukararinda, I'm sure I butchered that name, Mukararinda, I don't know. He told me, I want you to go back on earth. There's something I want you to do. After you will finish it, you will come back here in heaven and live here forever. I said, no, I want to stay here. He said, no, just go back. I said, no, I want to stay here. Till he spoke in a cool voice and convinced me to go back on earth. That's all you need to do is speak in a cool voice. So it would have been that easy. I would have done that to begin with.
Yeah, very chill, very relaxed. Very peaceful.
It sounds like hypnosis, very hypnotic kind of thing. Michael D. As I say sometimes flattery is used, and they're told they have a very important mission. So Michael D. said, I didn't seem to fully understand what she was telling me, but I enjoyed the loving feeling she was giving me. I seemed to be decoding and understanding what she told me more as time goes by. I would try to put into words what she told me. She told me that I was very special. She told me that I had a very important task to fulfill in this life. She said I would be going through some hard and difficult lessons, but that I would come out okay. Anyway, that's just a small taste of some of the tactics and stuff that goes on.
On and on and on and on.
Here's some, they talk about there's no judgment, that they judge themselves, right? But here's like stuff about a council of beings and stuff.
Yeah, that's where everything comes to a head for sure, or quite often, or could be their own judgment. But there's always that outside influence kind of peeping in the air.
Yeah, so I kind of wrote, I said, well, the vast majority of NDE'ers say they judge themselves. This is because of the life review where supposedly no judgment is given. Some do, however, say they were judged by God or a council, so there's a contradiction. Almost all NDE'ers say we have free will too, but many say they were sent back to Earth against their will. So which is it? Keep in mind, most of the ones who say we judge ourselves were still persuaded to come back for the same reasons. They are also sometimes told they have to learn more to learn, so they must come back. Isn't that a judgment? This also coincides with the in-between lives research of hypnotherapists such as Michael Newton and Dolores Cannon, who found that there's a council which eventually convinced the souls of the need to come back to Earth. At any rate, here's some near-death experiencers who said they were judged. Philip S. said, there was a royal figure who decided without my consent if I could stay with them or not. Isn't the word deciding? That's a judgment, right? No?
Yeah.
Patrice said...
Yeah, I mean, I love how the whole judgment, shame, fear, guilt narrative is always repackaged and interpreted as it's just a pile of garbage, completely ridiculous. And, here you are showing just more examples of this. It's just nuts. Yeah. It's nuts.
Patrice, there's quite a few. Patrice P. says,
but there's no judgment, Wayne.
God judges us all. God chooses where we go. I had no choice in the matter. I was sent back. Attila P. said, I moved so that I could quickly get to the light, but before I made to the door, one of the sentinels grabbed me and held me fast. The doors closed. Next, I found myself in some kind of courtroom. Before me sat an unbelievably stern, all-powerful, yet very kind judge, absolutely incorruptible. The judge thought for a while and said, but you have a mission. I did not want to return to the hell that is the reality of being on Earth, but the judge determined in his objective way, you must go back.
Praise the judge.
Gail A. said, then came a judgment of sorts where I was judged on the things I had done and the things I would do in my future life. This upset me as I felt it was mean to punish or judge me for things I hadn't done yet. I wasn't judged on big things.
Haven't done it yet.
I wasn't judged on big things, more small instances of intent. Then I was told that I had to go back, which didn't make me happy at all, as I knew that being alive would hurt. Every aspect of living would hurt. The thought of going back into a wet, disgusting body repulsed me. I couldn't believe I had to wear my body again, as it felt like wearing an old, disgusting coat that belonged to someone else. Kiko M. said,
but all of a sudden, haven't done yet? How many of those have you heard? I haven't heard. I don't even know if I've heard any of something. I mean, I don't think I've heard a statement like that. Yeah, but like where they say things I haven't done yet.
Oh, yeah, things I haven't done yet. Isn't that crazy?
I don't think I've ever heard that.
Even if you lived a perfect life, they're going to tell you, yeah, but you thought about it. Yeah, but you're thinking about it.
You're thinking about it, and you may do it.
You're going to do it, and then you died. It's like that movie Minority Report, where they're like, you're being, they're like your future thoughts and intentions. So anyway, Kiko M. Then all of a sudden a bright light appeared and I looked up towards it. In the midst of this light, there was a man smiling towards me. He appeared to be in front of a golden judge's bench that was huge. George W. I think I'm stuck in the life of review part sometimes. I need to forgive myself and move on. My grandfather was my judge in the experience, and he told me to come back and honor my father. David G. To my right were wooden stages like those in a courtroom in the movies.
Honor your father.
Yeah.
Give yourself away to your attachment, your loved ones.
Or I'm surprised I haven't heard one yet, like, do it for your country, whatever. David G. To my right were wooden stages like those in a courtroom in the movies. The first had a gray face, the second looked normal, but the third was a luminous entity. I knew it was a person, but without the form of a person. It was a light and changed shape continuously. I deduced that they were judging me. The person seated between the other two on my right struck the table with a gavel while holding up some papers in the other hand. Then he said my name, and he is condemned to go on living. Pascal C. At that moment, I had the feelings to be in a court of justice, but instead of our dull judges, nameless faces, genderless light beings are just there around me. Deborah J. Next thing I knew, I was standing in front of a council of 13 beings with the one in the middle twice as big as the 6 on either side. They were all sitting in chairs, big chairs at a sizable distance in front of me. I was naked and felt totally revealed.
Oh my God.
To use my hands I'm trying to humiliate the poor girl.
Intimidation, humiliation. Yes. Oh my God.
Tried to use my hands to cover myself up. She's like literally trying to cover herself up. The questions they were asking me were about my life and how I had lived it. I got the feeling they were not pleased with me. I was terrified, to say the least, exposed to the hilt. I knew they knew it all. Towards the end of the deal, he told me they were not going to let me remember most of what happened, and they had decided they were going to send me back because you have to get it right.
Oh my God. That
Michael
one's
F.
horrible.
It is.
That one's horrible.
However, several questions were asked by the members of the council asking me if I agreed to fulfill a promise of unknown nature they would allow me to return to this world. Closer to what was said would be that one day I would be granted the ability to do something great. It's like
maybe.
Unknown nature,
maybe.
One day, something, it's like, come on,
possible.
How big?
Oh right. My God. Oh, they're so horrible. Horrible.
Check this one out. Marie W. Behind me was a very tall angel who told me his name was Metatron. Metatron was my spiritual teacher. He explained in quite a bit of detail how mistakes can happen in a death. While this was happening, the masters and angels stayed outside of it and guided me. The masters who had me as their task had to get divine permission from the Council of Seven to intervene and alter my experience. When they considered that perhaps there was more they could do with me than just keep me on the other side and not allow me to return, we had to go to the council meeting. I was allowed to be in the room, but not allowed to speak or interfere in any way. They turned to me and told me that if I would agree to take on this new contract, but my healing would be greatly aided and accelerated through them if I would agree to the terms. And this last one, Frederick M. This council was led by my
trying to get that agreement, that consent.
Yeah.
Trying to extract
that's the next section. And he said, there I was shown my past life. I had to access the purpose of my life. This council was organized only with the goal to come back to Earth. Then they started to show me the life of my children without me, and they showed me the life that I would be living when coming back to Earth. My children would be happier. So onto the soul contracts, and it's a big deal for them, obviously. They have no real power over us if we're sovereign beings. They would need to convince us and have us agree to come back. So that these soul contracts are made. So Santel L said, we ask to be born and we enter into a contract. We come to Earth with a purpose. Rachel E. Yes, life can only exist if there is death. Without death, there can be no life. So we enter a contract with God, and the terms and conditions include difficulties, challenges, and definite hardships. That is the experience we all signed up for. Matt S. I was made aware that there were things that I had contracted to do that were still undone. Confirmation to me of reincarnation and contract incarnation. And then I mentioned the man I interviewed who said, imagine if you're a computer programmer and they have statements called if then else statements. And he was talking about all the end, but he said that he wanted him to agree to some things first before he could come back. Right. Yeah. And he had to make these agreements. So.
Crazy. I think I sent you the video of my friend Simon, who was working on astral projection and just trying to get out of his body. It was a couple months, a few months back, and he was watching one of the live streams. It was about a half hour or hour later or something like that, and he left his body, but basically he had to make an agreement that he would not go any further. You saw that video, right? I think, okay. I don't want to keep repeating things. I just
So Next section is suffering, which is such a core element of this existence here on Earth, obviously, right? So Ron K said, the Buddha was right. Life is about suffering. While alive, we are captors chained by the pains and pleasures of our neurons. As long as we pursue sensory pleasure, we must endure pain. Juliana D. I told her everything that had led me to committing suicide. She looked at me and said, God made you for a purpose. Trust me, I know this. I looked at her and said, do I really have to suffer, though? Doesn't God love everyone enough to keep us from suffering so bad? She looked at me and said, God works in many ways. Trust me, I've seen it happen. She knew that she hadn't convinced me. Mark H. said, I understood that the pain and suffering I was going through was nothing more than life in this world for a greater purpose. Sure. Michael L.
Okay.
We must suffer and offer that suffering as a sacrifice to God. Charmaine M. I was told why we are here and why we suffer. I was told that we all have to live our lessons on earth for our soul to grow, like being a child learning new things. We suffer to learn how to cope with things and to develop our soul.
Oh, it's the only way, right, Wayne?
Only way. Yeah.
No other way to figure this out.
It's for your spiritual growth,
That's
right? We come here to suffer so that we can grow, get bigger and stronger and brighter and
But yet you're all knowing, right, Wayne?
Well, when's that ever going to stop? You just, you can always come back and get suffer and get even bigger and brighter and even stronger. So it's just that's what they call it, a vicious cycle. Steve B. Time and again, we choose to visit a living mechanical world that was designed and created imperfect, purposely for the evolution of the soul, essence, spirit, energy, or whatever term you prefer. In a paradoxical sort of way, you could say that anger, hatred, greed, jealousy, as well as all of other forms of human suffering were designed to exist in this world exclusively for our benefit because they do not exist back home. If they don't exist back home, I don't know. It's whatever. So William T. said, when you are no longer a self, you no longer suffer. There's nothing to suffer over. When there's no voice in your head, there's no self to suffer. Pain exists, but it's just a detached element of reality that's impermanent, as everything else is. Scott W. said, she looked at me and said, we suffer for how we are being here. When we separated our being, our spirit from the one truth and created a false reality, we feel pain. Here's Sandy T on suffering. Good old Sandy T from the Reddit NDE forum. So she said, I understood that everything we do here on earth, all that we are, all that we experience, allows creation to exist. Every beautiful thing, every wonderful being and creature, whether on earth or in any universe, relies on people who are on the extremely rare places like earth. Why, with that question, I asked a dozen others, why me? Why suffering? Why this horrible world? Why did I go back when I could leave? Why would I come here and accept such horrific things when I am a spark of the divine, a portion of the great intelligence? It was a cry of confusion, anger, pain, and loss. First, we went into the chamber of the great intelligence, what you might call God. This was the loving, vast, incredible being who made all things, exists as and through all things. The great intelligence, God, is a paradox. It's completely loving and fully unlimited, which by the definition of paradox means it's impossible. It cannot be limited only to love. It cannot be limited to only being unlimited, or it is not unlimited. Earth is a place where the unlimited becomes limited, where the singular becomes many. Here it can know community and loneliness. It can know heartache and hope. It can know all which an unlimited being of pure love cannot. It can conceive and perceive evil, which in truth it cannot do this either. To solve the paradox, it must experience helplessness and limitation, and all as it is real in this place, it's also real. So what is free will? Free will is the option to come here and help solve the paradox of God, to be all that we are not, so that everything wondrous and joyful may continue to exist, so that love itself may continue to exist, so that the unlimited is not limited to being only unlimited. Why are the answers always simply to exist and to choose love and learn how to love? Because all you need to do to solve the paradox is to exist. And as we exist here, each time we choose love, we expand the universe. She says, for love's the true nature of what we are, and we suffer because of love, and it's a gift. The reward for the sacrifice will be joy, love, wonderful being, joy, the life and love everywhere in the universe. And God's grateful. She says, I felt its gratitude for all of humanity, for all who must suffer in this place. God is grateful to us and for all that we are.
Very grateful. You can you walk around Earth and you just feel
Isn't that what people do when they before they're about to eat a meal, they give thanks to the suffering or the being that
thank
died.
you. Yes, I'm eating, and on the other side of the world, someone is starving, or right down the street is starving, and hey, thanks, but
So
fuck
it doesn't
them.
come down. But here's the thing:
You know what I mean? Come on.
if God could do anything or is unlimited, then surely God could choose just to be pure love and just only positivity. Why does it need all the negative stuff? I mean, God can do whatever it wants. I mean, I understand what she's saying. If it's unlimited, it's everything, including any possibility, I guess. But it's just funny how we come down here to do their dirty work, right? It's like it doesn't come down here to feel the pain and the agony and the suffering. It's like, you all go ahead and do it, and I'll be happy. I'm very grateful. I mean, I get bigger and rewarded from it all.
Yeah, they get to judge us, but meanwhile they're up in the astral just chilling and doing their thing, and we have to come down and endure this bullshit. Yeah. Sounds great.
So little section on hell, and I only found like 40 cases out of the 4,000 that even mentioned hell, and it's just like 1%. And I don't think there was a single case, maybe one, where the being was actually in hell itself, being tortured. It's usually just saw something that resembled it.
Yeah,
that they could always leave, and they had like basically sent themselves there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my take on it too. It's all about their mindset on their whatever's happened to them in life leading up to that point, and they kind of create their own hell. They feel like they're in hell, but as far as the scenery, I mean, that's something to be debated.
Yeah. So there's also this notion of like a hypnotic trance or something. Like I was watching, one of my favorite movies is Naked Gun, the comedy, and it's like I was watching people react to it, and they mentioned sensory induced hypnosis. So it's like based on senses and stuff, but it's an induced hypnosis. And so there are some NDE'S that mention the hypnotic allure of the tunnel. And so here's like, you could kind of think of the Stockholm syndrome where captors fall in love with their captors. But here's a few mentioning a hypnotic trance. Peg said, a roaring noise began to escalate, and within an instant, I became aware of an intense, bright light off in the distance, and I turned my focus toward its captivating dance. The light's prism of energy and illumination began to spiral and grow, and I immediately put forth all my senses into its hypnotic allure. I began to feel the most utterly peaceful, loving sensation. I yearned to move toward and inhabit this light and the love it emanated. Michael F. The pull of this light is so captivating and overwhelming that I have no choice but to completely surrender to it. It reminded me of this shimmering liquid mercury. The attraction I feel towards this light fills me with total awe. Christina, I was watching those eyes and I could hear people talk, but it was as if in a trance or gazing at that elderly man. Nora said, the light was hypnotic, persuading you to enter, but the feeling of love felt stronger. Tina, the one in the center, had a hypnotic pull with his eyes. He was mocking me for something like I had lost a bet with him. And here's Euphoria. It's similar to the euphoria that some drugs here can induce, that feeling of oneness and everything. You got that here, even on Earth, but it's all drug induced, some of it. But Jean J said that perhaps it was a euphoric trance of some kind. It was as if a spirit had consumed my whole being. David W., a feeling of liberation opposite the death, or even a feeling of invulnerability. At the time, one has the impression a little intoxicating to want to fight against the Grim Reaper. Nothing else on earth can get to you, a feeling like a light euphoria. And then Joe D. said, I'm sure some sort of deal was forged that day, but instantaneously I was overcome with a euphoric feeling of what I can only describe as complete contentment. The next section is tricks, traps, and anomalies.
Nice.
So here's a few. Private Doubting said, at last, light is seen ahead. It's not the light of heaven, it's the lure of hell. Janet P., they asked, did you see a light? She said, no. And she said, beyond that, that's a false projection. Then I was alone, and far from out in the distance was a giant red blob. You know that movie, The Blob? That's what it looked like. And what it was, I could see and explain it, but because I was full of eternal life, Jesus. But this blob thing I knew as all of creation, all mucked together, just wandering around. It consisted of all intermingled to the point of lost identities, all globbed together, just wandering aimlessly, looking for some kind of food to keep it going. But it wasn't going anywhere because the most worst part of it was its feeling of lifelessness.
Oh.
Skeeter. The only thing that puts any doubt into my mind is that possibility that Satan can simulate the love of God and lure people into deception. That's what people say anyway. So yeah, I was in two minds about it for a while. Nolan, there was a blue sky and some clouds floating and moving slowly in the sky that seemed quite low, and that seemed above all false, as if hiding something. I had the sensation that this place was used as a place of welcome for children or young people, and that this environment had been built to reassure and appease them. Glenda G. He was thinking this must be heaven, and I'm here because I've tried to be good to people. But then he started moving faster until the meadow was left behind him in a blur. He found himself out in the middle of the boulders, floating over a great expanse of blackness below. Then he knew he had been tricked by Satan into thinking he was going to be in heaven. Francisca R. Once again on the flower meadow, I said I would love so much to stay in heaven and asked if there wouldn't possibly exist a speedier process for me. And Andreas promised to let me eventually decide myself. Of course, I knew that it was a trick. He would only let me decide when it would be clear that I wanted to remain on Earth, but nevertheless, it comforted me. Andrew P. The light has played a devious trick on me. The light allowed me to expand and become one with the universe, then rammed me back into my frail earthly body. At the time, it seemed like a very cruel experience to put me through. I was very angry at the light.
Oh,
Gunter
nice.
W. Suddenly, I realized that the bright sun in front of me was the shining moon, and that the red sun had the moon safely under control, making, in fact, one sun. This was the message that the sun had wanted to get across. Then the being of light wanted to talk to me on a man-to-man basis. He placed me on top of a high mountain where I had to sit on a large piece of rock. I asked him why he had wanted to destroy me, and he told me that there existed also evil, but very powerful and cunning beings who were his enemies, with whom he had been constantly fighting. He also told me that I had to warn my world against them, and I automatically nodded in agreement. He said that his enemies had wanted to play a trick on him by using me as a kind of trap, but he had to defend this world and the black one. Kial L. Experience was probably real. I do not know if it was real or if it was just a construct in my brain to ease me into death, and it could be an illusion or a trap.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
R.A. I initially believed that during this experience I'd been in the presence.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's kind of interesting they use the term construct, because I've heard others say, it just conjured up, or they just knew it was Jesus, they knew it was God, or Jesus was conjured up in their mind, or blah blah. I mean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's interesting to hear the same type of translation, but more bluntly, without the cognitive dissonance in their brain.
Yeah, not everybody is just so assuming or naive. So there's actually some critical thinkers out there, at least. Yeah, and he said a construct of my brain to ease me into death, and it could be an illusion or a trap. R.A. I initially believed that during this experience I had been in the presence of God, but over the years I had some real struggles, wondering about which being, God or Satan, had been its source. I cannot prove which one it was, but I do tend to believe that in this case it was God. Paul is a good one. He says, religions teach of a false God that is not the true God of the afterlife, but probably a demonic entity in itself who they pose as the true God. This is not God. This is the description of fear and darkness. God is not a demanding, bloodthirsty, bipolar control freak bent on balancing some sin balance sheet. Pressure does not originate from him. Pressure is fear-based, which originates from darkness. God is supreme and not a petty spy. He isn't a vigilant behavioral scientist, accountant, or a karma thought police with a penchant for revenge tantrums. And he's not represented by the two-faced liar strutting around a church house. What a racket. Could you imagine having this advantage in your personal life? If you don't do things my way, that means you're overtaken by a demon, and you risk the wrath of an angry God who may then allow the devil to give you cancer, even though he wishes he didn't have to allow it. He simply has no choice. You forced his hand. And this is like a George Carlin skit. How convenient for our rulers. Talk about a tormenting trap. This is spiritual enslavement that forces one to live in an altered state of consciousness, as well as a spiritual cesspool of confusion. Well, don't sugarcoat it for us, Paul. Tell us what you really feel.
Yeah. How you feeling, Paul?
Right.
Would you like to come on to the show and talk?
Right. James S. I looked up at my benefactors and found that they were dressed in black gowns and had a screen over their faces, which you look closely had a mirror-like substance that reflected your own image back at you. We mentioned that one. Trish R. St. Gabriel was telling St. Peter, this sounds like a joke. St. Gabriel was telling St. Peter.
Two saints walk into a bar.
Right, exactly. St. Gabriel was telling St. Peter that I had not read the Gospel of Mark yet. St. Gabriel was holding a huge open book I assumed to be a Bible, and they looked at it. It seemed as if Gabriel was convincing Peter I could not enter heaven yet. So it's like they're like saying, well, she can't enter heaven yet. She hasn't read the book of Mark.
Get back down there. Come on, get back down there. You got some reading to do.
Got to read all 66 books of that thing.
So ridiculous.
Gunter, my whole
all 66 soul, too. I mean, you got to love the number too.
Gunter, I think there is 66.
Yeah, there is. Yep.
My whole soul or being was immersed in this love. He lifted, well, the ones that were allowed into the canon, right? There's others that were excluded.
That's true.
They don't want you to know this part. He said, my whole soul or being was immersed in this love. He lifted me up and gave me a kiss on my mouth. This being of light loved me deeply, infinitely deeply, and more intensively. I was happy. I could have stayed in this beam of love forever. Gradually, the loving became weaker, and I know what's coming up, and I felt that something was wrong with me, something that made it very difficult for the light to continue with his love. He was trying not to tell me why. Finally, however, he was not able to keep it up any longer, and he quickly said, "You have a smelly breath and you need a bath."
Oh, damn.
I received the impression that I would have to take a bath similar to that I was used to on Earth, but by dipping the whole body. I thought to myself, this scoundrel of a voice, he has betrayed me by forcing me into this world. There's no way back. This is final.
Damn.
Yeah, I
know.
The
scoundrel.
Yeah, there's some contradictions and inconsistency. I think we mentioned these councils and stuff.
I love the council stuff. I do. It's very revealing.
EDF. But when I got to the round circle at the end of the tunnel where I would have entered into the light, I got a big surprise. Standing in the circle with legs apart and arms reaching out toward me was a very bright, multicolored figure, almost like a cartoon character. It reminds me of the Pied Pipers. Pied is multicolored, almost like a cartoon character and similar to the Joker on a deck of playing cards, but with a big smile that for some reason was more comforting and gentle than scary. He gently caught me in his arms and said to me, "Back to the womb," as he turned me around and gently tossed me back down the tunnel. I'd like to see like a Joker saying,
gently.
Yeah.
At least they were nice about it, right?
Oh, here's a good one. This is from Gary. Here's Gary. And he says, people should be studying NDE'S and finding out why we're trapped in these inferior bodies.
Thank you.
He was asked a question, what could a national organization with an interest in near-death experiences do that would be of interest to you? He pleaded, find out what is happening.
Go Gary.
This is the one he saw lots of technology, and he mentioned it reminded him of the movie The Matrix. And so, yeah, he had to get up and leave. He saw the movie, and he had to get up and leave because it was so eerily reminiscent of his NDE.
Oh, damn.
This one is from Fred B, and he had a series of NDEs while using ketamine. And each time he was able to see further into the experience until he was able to see through the illusion. Anyway, he says, in the 7+ experiences, I would come back to the same dark room, but I would be wheeled down the spiral corridor. There would be no humming or cheering. I would be sent down in a backstage area where people would be ushering my body in an open space. I would hear the words cheater being pronounced by some of them. The 6th and final phase would then happen. I would be welcomed as a hero in the middle of a giant open-air stadium with approximately 90,000 spectators. Loud music would be playing while I was wheeled on stage. I remember then feeling totally immersed in the experience as if my body on Earth didn't exist anymore. People that I knew on Earth, parents, friends, coworkers, would be waiting for me on stage. They would all be happy to see me again.
Wow.
So those are some of the tricks and traps and anomalies and contradictions. And I mean, that's just some, obviously there's more, but
that's great. It's great.
So I'd like to really stress the importance of creating our own reality with intention. And there are NDE'ers who talk along these lines too. So it gives us some hope and confidence, which is really important. And
there's quite a few that just kind of openly say it. I mean, even if they're stuck in the illusion, they realize that power, but
exactly,
they're still kind of, taking those belief systems over and just kind of bowing down and doing as they're told. But reading between the lines, just like all these other ones, is where you see the real meat on the bone, so to say.
Yeah, so I wrote, it's like a little teaser into an intro. I said the near-death experience does seem to be driven by consciousness, and the realization of that free will is the key to our freedom, because many are not using that power and instead are relying on an external source to dictate to them their reality. Some NDE'ers were indeed able to manifest or create their own reality, but it seems once one has gone through the tunnel into the light, that ability has been surrendered or greatly diminished. Dwayne S. said, as I was being shown how to manifest anything I wanted and that it would be instantly granted, I thought of a piece of my mother's chocolate cake. Instantly, my mom was there with me in heaven, handing me a piece of her heavenly chocolate cake. Juliet N. I could move effortlessly and adapt to any environment I happen to be in at any given moment. I would simply think about something and it would instantly manifest. Or I'd think about a place and there I'd be. Oh, what a sensation to experience such power, to be anywhere I wanted to be and to create anything I wanted to, and to feel so totally free. Mala, a voice sounded, you create the world that you know. You have been given the most wonderful gift, the ability to project yourself outward into physical form. Scott W. I heard words in different orders. Thoughts became imaginings, and imaginings became manifestations. I used the things he or it gave me in that place, and they were things most forget to use when they are bound. I was only a mind in that world, but a mind that could manifest desire. I saw that we have created false truths and realities because we loathe what we think is the truth. We have nearly, if not completely, ruined our lives, hearts, minds, and souls to keep feeding the illusions. We keep this false love and reality alive just to do it. Nancy Dannison, I realize that we all constantly manifest what we call physical reality just by virtue of our thoughts, and that the only reason we are fooled into believing it is real is because of the limitations of human senses. So I experimented with consciously manifesting some more to test its truth. I proved to myself that we do indeed have the ability to manifest what humans perceive to be physical reality by focusing our attention and intention on doing so.
Yeah, her big one was focus, attention, and intention.
She's got a whole book on how to manifest or how to manifest reality or whatever. Mark H. What your soul desired to see was filled at that very moment. Everything that your soul needed was met before it could be asked. Dwayne S. As my own orientation went on, they explained how on that celestial side of the veil, anything we desire is instantaneously provided. We just need to feel the desire. Lori E. I understood that thoughts create form. Patsy D. I was in physical reality because it is time for the physical being to mature and accept their responsibility for their creation and to realize that they create their reality. Mala, we are confronted by everything that we create. We are that powerful. I was shown that I'm not yet fully able to control my negative emotions in a reality where ultimately everything happens in an instant. So I was sent back to continue my learning. Janine E. I did not understand why my thoughts would manifest afterwards. Everything I would think of would appear, and it concerned me, so I made a promise to myself that I would keep positive thoughts and images because I learned that our thoughts are powerful, either negative or positive. The last one, Ron K. The way I just described it may sound like non-existence to some, but it's the only true existence of grand and unspeakable peace, security, and understanding. The ego's perception of the world is a collectively reinforced illusion. To be without wonder, desire is not non-existence. It's a state in which all our wants and desires are fulfilled. And I mentioned a section like on frequency and ascension, where they talk about we're a different frequency when we're out of our body. That's Rebecca.
Absolutely.
Spirit had a vibratory vibration to it, which changed in its frequency. That's Barry L. Greg S. said spirit is within a realm that moves much faster than the physical plane and is set to a much higher frequency vibration and is much higher fidelity. Joseph C. I would conclude our spirits resonate at a higher frequency. Scott W. I don't feel like I'm the one controlling me entirely anymore. A frequency was put into me, a resonance, and I can't help but vibrate at that resonance now. There's a tremendous amount of pain associated with feeling and hearing these frequencies as well, because there are man-made frequency generators that compete and interfere on purpose with the frequencies of the creator.
Yes. Oh,
yeah, Scott W. Every time I see that name, Scott W., I'm like, oh, I know this is going to be a good one.
That is incredible. You mind repeating that one more time?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I don't feel like I am the one controlling me entirely anymore. A frequency was put into me, a resonance, and I can't help but vibrate at that resonance now. There was a tremendous amount of pain associated with feeling and hearing these frequencies as well, because there are man-made frequency generators that compete and interfere on purpose with the frequencies of the creator.
So, unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, that's huge. I mean, he knows. He knows deep within himself. He
experienced it. Yeah.
All right, I think what we'll do, I don't know where we are in this section, but we're coming up on this break. We're a little over it, but you want to just continue after the break, or how you doing over there?
Before it's done, let me just mention this one last one from David. He said, I said, here's David's NDE where he toured 7 planes of heaven. This should give you an idea that there are higher planes than that first white light, and your goal is to go to the highest one path. In other words, we need to transcend the light. Like that one person said, don't just take the first, like I think William Buellman said, don't just accept the first reality with which you're presented, right? So anyway, David said, in each ascending heaven, the glory of these qualities in the light multiplied another 1,000,000 times. It's inconceivable how bright and beautiful life is in these heavens to any mind alone, separate from this light. I was taken to the point where the ecstasy and love were so overwhelming, I could barely stand the levels of cosmic energy and ecstasy any longer. I was then taken into the 7th heaven, and what happens there is so far beyond my abilities. God brought me down. I only lasted 10 seconds in the 7th heaven. To think that in each of these higher heavens, the light and glory of innocence, love, ecstasy, peace, power, beauty, grace, and wisdom multiplies 1,000,000 times over the preceding heaven makes it so difficult to pass through and live in.
Nice.
Yeah, just one last thing. Terry R. said, I also came to an understanding that heaven isn't a place you are admitted to, but it is a frequency that you attain. So, just
it's a frequency you obtain, I think, within. It's a struggle to get there and find that peace by transcending and realizing what this place is all about, realizing what you truly are within, and being able to get rid of it all.
Yeah, I just had a section on like how to get rid of attachments and the ego, all that. So it's like part of the Buddhist type thinking is if we're going to go on to different, better places, you got to stop being so addicted to this earth game, right? All your focus is on, man, I got to go back and I'm going to get the girl next time, or whatever. Then you're never going to move on to bigger, better places, right?
Yeah, and they'll provide that illusion at the time of death and say, hey, look at this hottie right here.
You want to play Guitar Hero? I'll make you a Guitar Hero, man.
And like, hey, you just follow us behind door number 1, door number 2, but they're both rig doors.
Monty Hall, let's make a deal. That's what it is. Yeah.
Crazy.
All right, well, we did it. We made it through the NDE section.
Yes, thank you so much, Wayne. That was incredible. Honestly, I thought we had a little more to go. You kind of surprised me, even though we were going for quite a while. I mean, I thought we actually still had more to go, but that was awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, this was what a power episode. And just everyone out there, just so you know, Wayne is returning tomorrow. We're crazy, so we're gonna do back-to-back shows. And
we still gotta touch on the aliens. If we can do like one more hour, I could probably.
That's what I thought. I thought we had more to go.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we're done with the NDE section. We still got aliens.
I was gonna say, I was like, I feel like we were missing a lot there.
The alien section's critically important.
Because, absolutely. I mean, that one really blew me away too, because when I learned of the crossover between them, I was like, wow, this is way deeper than I ever thought. because I had my obsessive alien research phase, and then I kind of just dropped it all. But then at the same time, I was I mean, I knew about the crossover between the aliens and or the aliens, the interdimensional entities, and NDE'S, and all. It blew my mind. But I'm saying, like, wait a minute, like, it seems like there's astral travel going on here, or yeah, it's an abduction, but it's more like a really negative astral projection or out of body experience. And then of course you have the extreme side where it could be government abductions. I mean, let's not exclude those. I think there's a little crossover between that as well, but the bulk of what we're seeing with the alien thing is really messed up astral projection experiences, bordering on or out of body experiences bordering on a hell-like type of NDE, but just with something that modern society sees as aliens, because that's what we got. So, all right, so we'll take a break for about 5 minutes, and we will return.
Yeah, you're not getting off that easy. We got
I didn't think so.
More work to do here.
All right, we got to crack the books in a little while. All right, we'll see you in about 5 minutes, my friends.
Sounds
take
good.
a break, and thank you so much, Wayne.
Mute the mic. All right, later.
There we go. All right. How you making out over there?
Oh, you can't get excited about this stuff, man. You just I could talk about this stuff 24 hours and probably not fall asleep.
All right. Well, let's see what happens. We'll go for an all-time record.
All right.
All right.
There'll be like one person left in the chat, and they're like probably nodded out on the table.
Maybe. There's a lot of time zones that watch the channel. You never know.
That's true.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Alrighty, my friends, we are back after our short break. Thank you for your patience. So we are going to dive into... Wait, what are we doing? We going into aliens first? Okay,
yes,
and then
aliens.
DMT. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so I just want to show people some books that like The Secret of the Soul, William Buhlman. Here's the Jürgen Zeevi, or whatever, Zeevi, I don't know how you pronounce his last name. Multi-Dimensional Man. Got that one for $1.50. Vistas of Infinity, another one by Jürgen. Now we're going to get into the section. Some of the books are Kenneth Ring's Omega Point. Good book. Major Project. David Jacobs' Secret Life. He's got another one called The Threat. Then you got The Watchers by Raymond Fowler and Watchers 2 by Raymond Fowler. You can see I've been studying this stuff for years and years. I mean, there's Encounters by Edith Fiore, End of the Fringe by Carla Turner, and there's also Angels of Masquerade, or Masquerade of Angels. And then you got these humongous Val Valerian books, Matrix.
Ridiculous.
3, and then they're
about like 500 to 800 pages a piece.
Well, they're huge. And back, this was like 20 years ago or something.
Yep.
Like
he started in the 80s.
Yeah.
And
then finally, DMT Spirit Molecule by Rick Strassman. He's got another one too, which I don't have. But anyway, just show you that. So there is a connection between near-death experiences and alien abductions. And abductions often include the experiencer, or at least aliens. Aliens often include the experiencer being, or abductions often include the experiencer being taken up into a beam of light, and alien beings can appear as light and send feelings of love. And so, so Raymond Fowler dedicated an entire chapter named UFOs and NDE'S in his book Watchers 2, Exploring UFOs and the Near-Death Experience. The chapter compares Betty Andreessen's UFO experience with those of near-death experiencers by including sections on the presence of OBE'S, approaching the light, greetings by a loving being, meeting robed entities, encountering beings of light, turning into light, communicating by telepathy, referring to home, encountering timelessness, wishing to remain in the light, and understanding love and raising environmental awareness. So this is an abduction account of Betty Andreessen Luca from his book, The Watchers 2. And she says, "Oh, we're running toward the light now. Oh, I can see the elder is changing to a white light being, and the gray is changing into a light blue one as we're running closer to the light. Oh, I'm starting to change into a golden colored light. Oh, this is beautiful. Oh, this is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Oh, there's such love. Oh, there's such peace. I'm just engulfed in light and blending into that light. Oh, it's just fantastically beautiful. It's just so much love, so much peace, and so wonderful." I mean, if I would have read that to you and told you it was a near-death experience, you wouldn't even have questioned it. You'd be, oh, yeah, it sounds just like all the others.
It sounds like it aligns perfectly.
The light and the love and the wonderful joy and all that stuff. Another book which explores the connection between UFOs and NDE'S is The Omega Project, Near-Death Experiences, UFOs, Encounters, and Mind at Large by Kenneth Ring, PhD. He writes about one of his cases.
I'm sorry, before you bring that up, you said he even went on Larry King,
yes,
I think,
Larry
right?
King.
Which I didn't even know.
I believe he's one of the co-founders of IONS itself.
Okay,
and the fact that
he is.
The fact that in one of his books, he's talking about the connection between UFOs and NDEs, and I believe he did so even on Larry King, if my memory is correct. But he writes, "What on earth or in heaven do we have here? Is this an NDE or some kind of UFO encounter? Clearly it has elements of both. It is not the only instance in my files. Among my respondents, I found others who, in describing what purports to be an NDE, began to talk about UFOs and aliens in the same context, just like what I've done tonight. Could it be that the world of the NDE and that of the UFO abductions, for all their differences, are not, after all, universes apart, but a part of the same universe? Could it be that NDEers and UFO experiencers have more in common with one another than we have heretofore suspected? So there's a few dozen experiences on NDERF.org where aliens were mentioned, including the one I talked about where Ruth said, I was taken to special entities that looked like the usual grays, but they had lots of wrinkles on their faces. They called themselves the Council and said they were part of a group called Soul Recyclers, helping souls to reincarnate. And this is on NDERF itself. Search for Ruth, there's probably a bunch of Ruths, but James N. said, I was taken to see a worm working controls of big cylinders that had every animal and peoples you could think of, and they were going down the cylinders from adults to babies. Go back and be a better man. The worm was an angel giving rebirth, supposedly.
You got a Matrix vibe too, whatever. The worms or the extended hands reaching up and down the pods and grabbing them.
And I mentioned the shape-shifting archons, or even light beings, what do you want to call them, about which form do you want me to take? So that kind of shows that there's at least some deception possible there on the other side. You're not being given, they can take any shape, whatever. So here's Truman Cash, and I don't have a physical copy of that book, but in his book, The Eye of Ra, the frequent abductee, Truman Cash, he recalls through hypnosis many episodes from past lives, and he writes, when one engages in extensive past life therapy, one will uncover many different types of implant stations. These are spirit traps that are designed to trick a free being and then force the being into a body. The common denominator of these experiences is electronics. I just had my screen flip out on me. I was trying to read this. Hold on a second. Sorry for that.
It's all right. Take your time.
That's interesting. Man.
No worries.
Okay, yeah. So when one engages in extensive past life therapy, one will uncover many different types of implant stations. These are spirit traps that are designed to trick a free being and then force the being into a body. The common denominator of these experiences is electronics. There are many different types of high-tech electronic methods to accomplish this. It appears the electromagnetics plays a key role in this process. What I find amazing is that beings without bodies can be effectively controlled with electronics. For example, on December 3rd, 1995, I uncovered an incident that started out with me as a free being in space. I became interested in a very large disc-shaped craft, so I entered it. I was then pushed by an electronic force field into a small confinement area near the edge of the inside of the craft. I was then sucked into a body via some type of electronic tractor beam. Then I was anchored in the body through a series of electronic wave pulses that felt very intense electric shocks. It overwhelmed me and then just beat me into the head of this body. He said he was out in space as a free being and looking down at Earth. I didn't notice that a very large black spherical implant station was approaching me because my attention was focused on the planet. An invisible electronic tractor beam locked onto me and began pulling me into a circular concave structure on the implant station. The extreme power of this tractor beam overwhelmed me and made me feel awful. In spite of my abilities as a free being, I couldn't fight free. I was pulled into the entrance, which was a tunnel in the center of the concave surface. I was then accelerated down this long curved tunnel toward the light at the end of the tunnel. He says, my colloquialism for this type of implant station is a soul sucker. After being totally overwhelmed by this energy beam and pulled through this tunnel, I began to feel very lethargic. I then found myself in an implanting room being compressed into a female body by a powerful white light energy beam that beat me into a body. This energy beam was so irritating that I felt like screaming. I began to try to fight back with the body. That's when they knew that the implantation was finished because I was using my body to fight back. Two tall insectoid beings that looked like praying mantises then escorted me to another part of the implant station. I was now in a very large white light room. I was out in space, looking back at the Earth. I'm repeating that. Anyway, he says, through telepathic hypnosis, I hear a very soothing hypnotic voice whispering in my head, sleep. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. Don't remember. You have no past. You will not need to remember your past. Be here now. No more thoughts of the past. Forget the past. Move forward into a new life. You will begin a new life in the light. After I was thoroughly inculcated in this white light amnesia room, 2 insectoids approached me and told me that I was ready to begin my new life. This involves an alien, a bug-like one, a praying mantis-like alien. I have the impression of a voice, possibly programming. Something flashed in my head. I'm just going on impressions. I saw that foggy light. I hear a voice say, go to the light, and I go to the light. Start at the beginning of this instant and see if you can pick up more details. I'm not going to the beginning about the middle of the instant. The phrase, go to the light. It's an implant station. I see a big round sphere like a space station maybe. And what happens next? The insect guy. I think right before that, I'm in an area that feels like a round room, and there's this intense white blinding light coming from the walls. There's a struggle to counteract the force of the light that's 360 degrees around me that's forcing me into this body. I feel it in my body, not just my heads and torso. They're not just compressing me into a head. Oh man, don't go to the light. Down by my feet is a cocoon-shaped capsule. The conveyor slides me into it and the top is put on. I'm shut in this capsule and shot onto this planet. I think it's Earth. Okay, I'm going into a big, huge sphere space station. I'm going through a tunnel of light. At the end of the tunnel is this room and a body with intense light and power that just pushes and presses on me and forces me into this body. And it's like, it's programming you to be an infant and go out the birth canal. And because they put me in a body, they tricked me. They put me in a capsule and shoot it out onto a planet. And he's like, I think the beginning is when I died. It's a battle with swords. I think swords go right through me in my abdomen. I hear this, go to the light. I'm out of my body. I don't know if somebody communicates this to me or what, but I'm going to the light, a tunnel of light very fast. This light goes to the implant station. That's just huge. Reminds me of a small planet or moon. It's just really huge. At the end of the tunnel of light in this room with glowing white light, there's a body in the middle of the room. The light just pushes me into the body. Don't go to the light. I was right about that. That makes sense. He says the new age light is part of the trap.
Bingo.
Yeah, it's like just goes on and on about, it's like they're also telling him he's being programmed. They take him to the white misty light. I'm being programmed. Peace, rest, soothing, whispering in my mind. The words, God loves you, peace and the light. I'm being programmed that I'm with God now. Always return to the light. I can see why people think going to the light is good because it feels good. I would begin a new life now. The old has passed away. You will be safe from the light. You can always come to the light. You feel like you're really loved, really special. And it's like I get the impression that they are light beings, but they're insincere, but they're not. He says the programming is very sweet, but very insincere and phony. And he goes, a body.
It's got that fake feeling.
Yeah, and he's like, what is a light being? He says a body that is just light, but it's not. They're the insect guys. So yeah, it's that. And then so that's pretty much the end of the Truman. There's a couple more, but and so here's the section on aliens that appear as light. And in the Edith Fiore's book Encounters, one of her case studies, Sherry, was taken up into a craft in a beam of light, and under hypnosis recalls, quote, it seems like I see a flash of light. I feel this pulsating, pulling kind of sensation. It seems like there's some kind of form that seems to be mostly light. I feel kind of frightened. It's pretty scary. The one thing I do see is that the eyes are very caring and loving. The face I saw was gone. It was more amphibian than anything else. I feel like it's like light, some kind of light that's making me calm. It's calming. It seems to be emanating from whoever's around me. I just get feelings of love. It seems like they only want me to remember them as light. And she's another case.
They only want them to remember them as light.
And, another case, she said that she was told by the aliens who called themselves the planters. They told her, eat foods with the highest vibration on your planet, and you must talk to us. Talk to those of the light. That's who we are. And when you feel the light, you would get your nourishment. Bathe in the light. That's the force of love. The more so he says, they say that the animals are also part of this. We are to the animals as they are to us. They're in our care. Anyway, he says, if we can love these things that are evolving toward the light, that will enable the love to come to us as well. Sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, so John Lear told Art Bell, during a 1994 interview. He said, mankind is an experiment. According to the documents that Bob and read, the experiment has been going on, as Bob Lazar, the experiment has been going on for several 100,000 years. They made 65 separate corrections to a being that they made from whatever was on the earth at that time, mated or genetically engineered from something else. They had to send to what we are today, and what they refer to as containers. Now, what we contain wasn't specified. You can say it was blood, hormones, enzymes, that sort of thing. But also there's fairly good evidence that the experiment involved the soul, and that they can experiment with the soul. They can remove it, they can put it in, they can save it, whatever they want. That's my best guess. It has to do with the soul, but to what end the experiment is, I don't know. And later on, he added, I think they created the whole thing, and that's their interest, their handiwork being the breeding of the human race for over 200,000 years, in which they made 65 separate corrections to make us what we are today, which they refer to as containers. I doubt the experiment's over. I think it's continuing. Each of these separate corrections, they have to, when they bring in the new model, they have to recall the old model, and they do that with mass plagues, floods, gyroscopic possessions of the earth. In a 98 interview, Art Bell brought up a previous interview where John Lear told him not to go to the light. He goes, I recall you saying one thing to me, John, that has haunted me for years and haunts me today. We have had a number of guests on this radio program about life after death. Inevitably, in every warm and fuzzy life after death story, people rush toward the warm, inviting light, down the tunnel into the light. And once you said to me, John, don't go toward the light. It's a trick. Go toward the darkness. John replied, now remember, I qualified that by saying that's what Whitley Strieber told me. Art said, well, it still bugs me, because what if I had to make that choice, John? Or John says, well, right, now I'm going toward the darkness. Later in the program, Art asked John, why the dark light? John said, because according to Whitley, if you go to the bright light, you have made a conscious choice of which direction to go. And supposedly, according to him, at that point, if you go to the white light, the Greys, or whoever's in charge of this thing, can decide what to do with you. Now, they can either send you back into another body, or they can put you into the black box. Whereas if you go to the dark, you go right back to a terrestrial body, and you can continue on with whatever body you got into. And,
wow.
Yeah. So Val Valerian in Matrix 2, The Abduction and Manipulation of Humans Using Advanced Technology, he wrote, fourth density Greys, the ones who are primarily dealing with Whitley Strieber, are the ones who possess the technical equipment to draw energy from the human bioplasmic field. They also have the ability to extract memories and experiences from the human being. It is they who await in the light when a human being dies. The human being is then recycled into another body, and the process begins all over again. Fourth density Greys are, in effect, sensation junkies. To experience human emotions and is the closest they themselves ever come to the idea of feeling. He later writes, these entities have been abducting humans for many centuries. These entities view Earth as a big farm and have been essentially raising and harvesting humans, and apparently abduct humans to take back to their home planet to raise there in a kind of human husbandry scenario. Part of this alien hypothesis is that compliant humans can be legally harvested for various slavery purposes. Humans are effectively considered raw materials, including to be used as nutrition and also for parasitic energy usage by aliens. That was written back in the 90s. And before the movie The Matrix ever came out. And then Matrix 5, Valerian wrote, they want to recycle low to lower mid-level spirits into another breeding productive incarnation. Hence, the light and tunnel at death trap. Scanning someone they wish to recycle as they near death, the aliens discover who the person was close to has died. They project the person's image into the white light tunnel, and the image waves you in deeper. If you choose to follow, you can be trapped and sent to another incarnation of their choice. This shows the Empire does have an understanding of the spirit, but it attempts to short this out. The light and tunnel trap is a relatively new device, but one that will fail, and they now know this. Go into the light, say those who have had near-death experiences. They are the salespersons chosen to advertise this alien venture. Never enter that light. Go up, left, back, right, or anywhere but there. The mass media exposure of the light and tunnel trap seen in the film Ghost, where the hero willingly enters the glittering trap, is to try to get people to buy the destination. So, boom, he was all over it back in the 90s.
It's incredible how far back his stuff goes. I mean, I think when I looked up, what is it, Val Valerian or something, it was, maybe you know this, isn't it a former CIA agent?
I'm not positive
or something
on that.
like that. I mean, I thought it was some. I know I did some digging on the name and the background.
Yeah,
and
somebody said so. I mean, who knows?
But I mean, I just thought I'd ask. I mean, the way I kind of see it is if the I mean, there are those nuggets in there, just like everything else. The nuggets are everywhere, and you just have to kind of weave in and out of it.
Well, this book was never, I mean, it's like you said, it's like huge. It's like 700, it's like this thick. It's like ridiculously expensive. It's never like, you're not going to like go to Barnes and Nobles and find an easily readable. I mean, it's just, it's very difficult. I mean, the only reason I knew about it was this friend down in San Antonio told me about it.
You mentioned it, yeah.
Yeah, and if it weren't for that, I probably never would have
never known it existed. Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, so it's not like they were like pushing it out there for the masses to digest. It's like maybe, but maybe somewhere they have to like tell people. They have to have a disclosure. Like, well, yeah, we told you it's in a book, and if you didn't find it, well, that's
good luck finding
it. Right. So Linda Moulton Howe said that the praying mantis aliens claim to be in charge of our spiritual evolution. She also stated, if the recycling of souls is the machinery in this universe, one could argue philosophically that entropy in this universe was designed so there'd be a recycling of souls to grow and strengthen and evolve. Year after writing her book, Masquerade of Angels, which is about aliens, the phenomenal abduction researcher Dr. Carla Turner, in her last public lecture on the aliens, stated, quote, the entities deliberately deceive us in their interactions with us. This is the number one fact that has emerged from my research into this field. If I'm able to leave you with only one message, that we are being deceived in many ways by these interactions, then I will be happy with my work today. And she was, I think a few months later, she was gone.
Yeah, it wasn't
only
much
like
longer.
50 something years old, and
it makes you wonder. I mean, there's some other works of hers that we can't even really talk about.
Yeah,
but,
and one of the subjects in her book, I think, was that they were warned and they didn't listen, and then they disappeared. And then they like warned her husband. It was talking about on forums, and he listened, so he backed off. And like the one thing is, she said like, next lecture I'm going to name names, and it's like gone. Yeah. So it's the one thing you don't do is
makes you wonder. Makes you wonder.
So anyway, she said, aliens show a mysterious interest in the human soul. A young girl whom the aliens asked if they could borrow her soul. Two different abductees, totally isolated from each other. It happened to both come from the St. Louis area, both shown at the age of 5, a gigantic metallic spherical object somewhere in space, and were told in essence it was the soul recycling center. A man who watched as his young body was killed and his soul energy released, captured in a container, and taken to a new replacement body where it was reintroduced to the body through the technology of the little black box you might have heard about in some of these cases. And then she speculated on an Art Bell Coast to Coast show in '94 that on the nature of the aliens' purpose. She said, my best opinion is that it's some form, metaphorically speaking, of farming, that we have some source for something, qualities of physical materials, our energetic energy patterns, I have no idea. We might find that they could be considered more correctly, perhaps interloping farmers, in the way that we as a species has taken over wild animals time and again and domesticated them and genetically altered them for our benefit. Here, I found that quote from Whitley Strieber, if I mentioned in the other episode. It's from this book, Communion.
Oh, yeah, Strieber's Communion,
Yeah. He said, I remembered my protest to her when she reassured me about the operation not hurting me. The sense of helplessness was an awful thing to contemplate. You have no right, I had said. We do have a right. 5 enormous words, stunning words. We do have a right. Who gave it to them? By what progress of ethics had they arrived at that conclusion? I wondered if it required debate, or it seemed so obvious to them that they never questioned it. The fire before me sputtered. I opened the vent on the stove and it obediently flared up again. Maybe their right came from a different direction than one might think. If they were a part of us, it might be that we granted them the right they assert. So anyway, he goes on, he says, if they were real visitors, though, I wanted to know the ethics behind their assertion of their right. Of course, we ourselves barely questioned our rights over the other species on Earth. How odd it was to find oneself suddenly under the very power that one so easily assumes over the animals. So there's a section here on aliens and euphoria. And Professor David Jacobs has regressed over 100 abductees over a total of over 1,000 times, and he wrote this in his book Secret Life. Unaware abductees can have inexplicably exaggerated emotional reactions to normal activities. For instance, they might wake up in the morning with intense feelings of euphoria. They ride the crest of an emotional high that seems to have no cause and that may last for several days. One young woman woke up feeling extremely euphoric. When she rode her bicycle into town, she had the inexplicable feeling that she was falling in love with every man who looked into her eyes. Aliens and love. You know, in Eve, what's her name? Eve Morgan has a whole alien love bite thing. I don't have her book, but that's like another whole thing where she explores the connection between aliens and love and falling in love with them and them sending us love. But anyway, from David
I think
Jacobs'
even
book,
Jacobs touches on it too.
That's exactly where I'm going to go to here. From his book, Secret Life, bonding. He says, during mind scan, the taller being can elicit specific emotions in the abductee, such as fear and terror. Often he would create an instant rush of pleasurable emotions in the abductee that bonds her to him. As he stares deeply into her eyes, she may feel that the taller being is really a good individual. She wants to help him. She wants to be with him. She wants to give herself to the being's program to help in any way she can. She does not want to leave. Sometimes there's a romantic and even sexual quality to these thoughts. Some women say that they love the taller being. They want to give themselves to him fully and completely. Men have similar feelings, especially if they perceive the alien to be female. Bonding can be a totally overwhelming experience. Very young children undergo the same experience, but instead of strong romantic or sexual feelings, they usually consider the taller being to be nice and a friend. During abductions, they are comforted that their friend is present to protect them. So depending on the person, they'll like try different tactics, right? You know, so now you look at him, what kind of feelings go through your mind? Love. By love, do you mean directed toward him or just some of amorphous? It's for everything. Are you looking into his eyes also? It's like, he makes me. In his second book, The Threat, Jacobs writes, the mental procedures were even more baffling. Aliens almost always stared into an abductee's eyes at a distance of a few inches or less and seemed thereby to elicit love. It seemed thereby to elicit love, fear, and anger. Some of these mind scan procedures could provoke intense sexual arousal in both men and women. By staring into people's eyes, the beings could cause them to see prearranged scenarios and movies in their minds. After the examination, a more human-looking alien, who she called Sanda, led her into a hallway where she met a small alien. Melissa was required to touch the small alien's head and immediately felt love, warmth, and affection emanating from him. Another section.
So
I'm starting
touching, making a forward motion, agreeing to do it.
Yeah, they're eliciting love, like they're exuding love, and they're also causing. And that's so many similarities and parallels to NDE'S.
It's unreal.
Instead of it just being an alien with a big old head or whatever, it's like a being of light. I mean, and it can shapeshift and take any form. If it wanted to take that shape of an alien, it could. And maybe it's like in a different frequency to where it can disguise itself, but maybe
sure. I mean, if you think about it, all it's got to do is use its intention, just like we do. So, we can debate whether there's an actual spirit behind all that, but I mean, at the end of the day, if it's just some sort of technological frequency that's being emitted, then it's still achieving the same goal. So, real spirit or not, it makes no difference. It's accomplishing what it needs to.
Yeah, so I'm starting to get images that I somehow really like this person. I don't understand it. That maybe really, God, I get this stuff just popping up on my screen trying to interrupt me. Maybe I'm really in love with this person. And he says, for women, the mind scan procedure with its elicitation of romantic and sexual feelings can encourage them to feel love and affection for the aliens. Wow. I didn't bring this book in because I didn't think I was going to mention it, but Missing Time by Bud Hopkins. The situation of abductees being made to feel special, loved, members of the select occasionally occurs in abduction cases. The reasons for their having been singled out are almost always vague, but the abductees feel gratified and less frightened, though not necessarily less confused. An interesting parallel presents itself in the accounts of former followers of the Reverend Sun Moon's Unification Church, beginning
the moon call.
The Moonies,
The Moonies. I got something I'll share with you privately on that one. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's like at the beginning of the recruitment, an overpowering sense of being needed and wanted is systematically instilled in them by Mooney operatives. Lonely college students are visited in the dormitory rooms, fed milk and cookies, invited to love-drenched weekend retreats, and slowly won over before specific issues in ideology or dogma are even mentioned. This love technique is so thoroughly overwhelming that when articles of religious belief are finally introduced, the subject feels like an ingrate to reject them. Bestowing importance and showering love upon the potential convert weakens his opposition and sets him up for whatever unusual demands are to be made of. I have no idea as to the veracity of that stuff, but anyway, that's what he said in the book. The inference is the same that I made in Virginia's abduction. The reality is the physical operation and its attendant pain, while the sense of happiness and love is an enforced illusion. Whitley Strieber in his book Communion wrote, I realized that the extraordinarily powerful states I was examining could lead me in two undesirable directions. First, the sheer helplessness that they evoked created awe, which could lead to a desire to comply, and then to love. Second, the fear caused such confusion that one could not be sure how to feel. Whitley says, what if I say love? Longing? Does anyone feel anything like that toward them? Dr. Carla Turner, in her book Taken, she said, well, some of it I remember, like the crystalline ship they were in. It was full of lights, and I called it the crystalline ship because it wasn't metal like a plane. The lights made everything work by itself, and they moved things without touching them. And even me, they moved me without touching me. They moved me up and down, and they're full of love, and they protected me with a silver light in me, and I loved them.
They protected her, too. Oh, nice.
And there's another one. A little boy has real big slanty eyes that can film everything inside me, in my head and my soul. He talks to me in my head and doesn't use his mouth because he only has a line there. He's real skinny, but he doesn't have to eat because he's an angel. I thought angels had wings, and I laughed because he laughed with his eyes because he knew what I was thinking about the wings. I got kind of scared because I knew he was really an angel then. He knew what I thought, and only angels can tell what you think all the time, except so can Jesus. So I thought in my head, do you know Jesus and the beings? And I filled up with a love feeling that kind of made me cry and know something special. And the being said, yes, in my head. I said, are you like the angels? And the being said, yes, but not as you have been taught. I wanted to stay with them and go back with them. Donald Worley researches Nordic aliens and wrote on his website, their telepathic communications are soothing, and they can project an intense feeling of love for the abductees. Some persons have remained in a euphoric state for weeks after an altered state episode with one. And Penny Smith said, I had an intense longing for these beings after I left them, an intense love, respect, and awe when I was with them. Diane said, I was made to feel emotions of the highest intensity a human can feel, whether fear, love, hate, etc. In one episode, she was moved through the halls or tunnels and saw humans in fluid and large tubes, regular men in white coats, and short tan beings. Another time, she was in a serene garden-like place that caused her to be in a euphoric state for days afterward.
There you go.
Meehan from Louisiana. Two more. But Anita has proven to be quite aware of the psychological manipulation on the aliens' part, and has thus been able to see through some of their intentions or motivations. I recall one looking into my eyes, she described from an encounter, and making me feel extreme love from him. I put my hands on his face and said, too bad it isn't real, meaning the feeling of love that he was projecting into my soul.
Damn.
Although she is never certain of who has abducted her or what they have done, Beth feels that at least one of her experiences, the 1978 event, involved a benevolent group of aliens. She said, they brought me an enormous sense of affinity with God, with the universe, and with love. And concerning the clones or hybrids themselves, she was further told that their souls are recycled and that they are regenerated many times. Alien or Whitley Strieber mentioned at one time in one of his books too about the recycling nature, I believe.
Do you remember which one that was?
No, I sure don't.
Okay, that's all right.
It seems like I'm always looking up the Whitley Strieber quotes. But David Jacobs says aliens have control over our thoughts and actions. And then the threat he wrote, once joined with the abductee's neural pathways, the alien essentially has free reign to do what he wants. The abductee is no longer in control of his own thoughts. The aliens can exercise absolute power over the minds and bodies of the abductees. They can make the abductees think, feel, visualize, or do anything the aliens want. So like when they get like within just a few inches of the the eyes. I think they're tapping into that nerve that goes through that down the spine, right? I forget what they call that optic nerve. Yeah, there's an optic nerve that connects, and so that's what they're possibly doing. And
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I'm just so in the middle with all this as to where the experience begins in the physical and where it kind of could be happening in the astral. And then, you know, this is not including anything that might be military abduction related. That has to be cast aside. That has nothing to do with it. Or, I mean, well, maybe it does with particular cases. But there
was a book, I think it was, I want to say Katerina Turner, and I think it was called The Alien Jigsaw. And I want to say she was a military abductee, but I'm not positive about that. But there have been people talk about the connections there, which probably don't want to go into, but anyway.
Well, I mean, you know, you probably read some of the cases where they say that they, you know, are brought to underground.
Melinda Leslie talked about some of that stuff too.
Who was it? Leslie?
Melinda Leslie.
Melinda Leslie. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's the cases where they talk about being brought to underground bases. Some people even claim that, you know, I mean.
It's that Phil Schneider guy that talked about Dreamland or something.
Yeah. Phil was an interesting one, especially early on. I mean, I haven't looked at his stuff in years and years, but I think there's a lot of red flags with him from what I remember. But, you know, whatever. I mean, it again, it's all about kind of piecing things together. For those nuggets.
Yeah, that goes way back. What was that guy?
80s, right? Late 80s?
Tom Hamilton or something like that. We're talking like stuff I looked at like 25 years ago.
Long time. I mean,
want to say Bill Hamilton was his name. Bill? Yeah, there's so many people back then. Yeah.
Well, I remember Phil Schneider. Phil Schneider, right?
Maybe Phil Schneider, but I think it was Bill Hamilton that talked to him or something. It's like so far in the past.
And then
anyway, I was just going to go on.
We had like John Mack also from Harvard.
Yes, abduction.
You know, doing his research. And then he died, got hit by a car, like what, in London or something, or in the UK, somewhere. I don't know, somewhere when he was out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
He was an accredited, he was a lecturer. I mean, you're talking about, what do you say that? Was it Princeton
Harvard,
one of those,
And they shit on him. They came down on him, but he stood his ground.
Sure. He had a lot to lose.
Yeah, and he looked up at that he looked into that mass sighting with the school, with the children, and who knows where that all goes, but I mean, it's just kind of weird that he ends up dying by getting hit by a car. I mean,
speaking of which, Dr. Carla Turner, in her last public lecture before she got cancer and died at age 48, she said, the entities routinely take control of the human in a number of ways. They take control of the person's perceptions. They take control of the person's emotions. They take control of the person's actions and also the person's subsequent memories. No matter what kind of contact, as a rule, but not always, the human cannot react freely, cannot react independently, and therefore cannot accurately assess the situation through sensory input and cannot internally respond in a normal fashion as he would to any other incident. So we're left with another basic fact of the abduction phenomenon, is that the entities are in control and exert the control all through state of consciousness, and the control can extend to a number of different processes within the person's physiology and psychology. And then there's another, I'm not sure where this quote comes from, but it says,
that sounds spot on. I mean, I mean, you know what, like one of the things that I like to do with anyone, it's usually someone who passes, who's a celebrity, unfortunately, but anyone who's like a public figure, I like to try and find their last lecture or last interview.
Look at JFK.
Anything.
Secrecy is repugnant.
Yeah,
right?
And then you see a truth bomb there, and sometimes you see a prediction of their own death coming out of their own mouth. and it's, this, I don't think they necessarily know it, but it's subconsciously coming out. I mean, just, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
I think this quote must be from David Jacobs, because he talks about the hybrids, and he says, anyway, somebody says, Allison could feel her thoughts and memories flowing out of her and into the hybrid. The hybrid absorbed Allison's thoughts and experiences and apparently derived some benefit from this procedure. And then this little section on false screen memory implants. And Dr. Carla Turner wrote in Taken, she says, but intensive research shows that at the core of the human-alien interaction, there is a clear pattern of deception. We know, for instance, that screen memories are often used to mask an alien abduction. Such accounts abound in which a person sees a familiar yet out-of-place animal like a deer or owl, a monkey or a rabbit, and then experiences a period of missing time. That's a book by Bud Hopkins too, called Missing Time. The person often awakens later to find a new unexplained scar on his body. Uneasiness about the encounter will persist, however, and far different memories may start to surface in dreams or flashbacks. Then the person seeks help to explain the uneasiness. Quite often, hypnotic regression is used to uncover the events behind the screen memory, and that is when a typical alien abduction surfaces. The most recent research in which I've been involved has turned up yet a second sort of screening process, but from several recent cases, it's apparent these recovered memories may also be yet another screen, masking events that are much more reprehensible. And David Jacobs in the thread, he says, then in 1981, Bud Hopkins published Missing Time, a study in which he examined 7 abductees, found that a person could be taken many times during the course of his or her life and might have screen memories that masked other abduction events. So these might produce screen memories of animals staring at the abductee. And he said the primary reason for the positive attitudes, most of these abductees have not undergone competent hypnosis to help them understand what happened. And that's what I was talking about. If we get David Jacobs to do competent hypnosis on people, on not aliens, but the in-between live state, which they could overlap completely, right? I'm surprised he hasn't stumbled onto it, or maybe
he may have. You never know.
Maybe he's working on a book that for 20 years.
He worked at Temple. I mean, that's a pretty big school. There's some big names that come out of there. So who knows what the situation is there. But I mean, I'm definitely going to try and get him on for us to talk with him.
I've been trying to get people to reach out to him and get him to do that. So
maybe, I mean, I started writing an email when we were talking about it the other day. Maybe we should both try and kind of.
If I can get a hold of his email address.
I got it. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Oh, that'd be awesome. See, Whitley Strieber wrote in Communion, I did not know that the owl and the light were screen memories that concealed a traumatic experience. As described by Freud, the screen memory is a method that the mind uses to shield itself from things too upsetting to recall. And in her book, Masquerade of Angels, Carla Turner wrote, many people feel that the alien contact is truly good, but they are programmed to the extent that they're unable to see anything else, no matter what actually took place. Very often I find there's another story underneath, and once you get past the screen, then you find out what really occurred. When people break past the screen and see the truth, they're usually in shock and terrified just as you were. And sometimes there are specific blocks installed at the same time that can appear to be many different things. Strange colors, extremely ugly, grotesque faces that frighten you. But in an interview with Art Bell, David Jacobs said, one of the things we've discovered is that when people remember what happened to them straight out, and it's just a conscious memory without any hypnosis whatsoever, it's almost always totally wrong. What we find is that because this is a clandestine phenomenon, and because people's memories are blocked neurologically, obviously there's no other way to do it. When they remember something straight out, they remember bits and pieces of things, and sometimes even those bits and pieces are distorted, and they put them together into a seamless narrative, and it becomes a concrete memory to them, and they'd stake their life on it. I mean, I've had people tell me absolutely with fists and palm, this is what happened to me. I remember it like it was yesterday, and this is what happened, and this happened, and this happened. And then we'll investigate this case, the situation, the memory under hypnosis, and they begin to realize it didn't happen that way. And they'll say, I think I was wrong about that. This is not what I'm remembering. What I'm remembering now is something else, which actually itself becomes more logical. And they can see the pieces that they had remembered and how it fits into a more complex story, but for sure it becomes different.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, I've heard that before, but I mean, you see it in the NDEs too. It's just that, there's this memory wipe going on. There's this gap in what they say, and it's like they perfect the script that is supposed, that they want to come back with the experiencer. And then there's the ones that they don't have to even worry about, that they just go along with the show, do what they do. They have their belief system. It aligns with it perfectly. And the system doesn't have to do anything because it's all handed to them on a silver platter. So it would be interesting I don't think we'll ever see this in our lifetime, but it would be awesome to see some sort of deep research into that aspect of NDEs and abductions and even breakthrough trip reports, past life regressions. I mean, I find it interesting. Just think about the past life regressions. We are so in the dark about whatever the hell is going on in those soul group classes. We get a few glimpses here and there.
I still got my microphone way over there.
Yeah, hey, it's been coming in good. So
that's I guess. But you would think Dolores Cannon would have stumbled onto that because she wrote a bunch of books on. Well,
they say they can't get it.
Keepers of the Garden.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because that's the thing. They're not skilled enough. skilled as she was, she maybe wasn't skilled enough to get past that. It seems like layer.
Yeah, it seems like all these regression therapists can't break through that layer. They'll get a little bit.
That's where David Jacobs is the crown jewel.
Let's get him. Let's get him. Let's get him on. That'd be great. If he could break through that portion, that's incredible. Let's hope. Yeah. It'd be nice.
So that's pretty much the section on aliens for the most part, and all we have is the DMT stuff, which we could be as long or short as we want it to be.
Okay,
so,
let's.
To me, it's not really that important, other than they mention a lot of aliens and insectoids and stuff, and entities that feed off them sometimes, but then these jester type beings that so I don't know, however you want to handle it.
I think what we'll do is we'll take a short break and we'll get into DMT, and I'll go. You want to go long, we'll go long. You want to go short, we'll go short. I'll leave it in your your corner.
Well, we'll do the full section on it. It would be
great.
Keep it under an hour or whatever, and we'll be good.
That sounds good. Okay. We'll go for and then we'll just fall asleep on stream. We'll wake up tomorrow.
I don't think it's going to take much more than 30, 40 minutes. We'll be good.
Great. Okay. All right. We'll be back, my friends. Thank you so much.
Alrighty.
See you in a moment. See you about 5 minutes, my friends. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Wayne.
Sure.
God, my dog just yacked all over the bathroom floor. Alright. Alright, Wayne, we're gonna go back into it. Sorry for the delay. Alright, just so you know, you're muted, brother. Alright, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Alright, we are back. Thank you for your patience. Unexpected dog emergency. Right. So, alright, Wayne, where are we headed? We're going to DMT, I assume?
Yeah, DMT. Okay. I just wanted to show a few books I scoured over the break. Matrix 2, I showed you 3 and 5, that was 2. Mm-hmm. Here's the one we're going to be going into, DMT. So there's my little, I think I showed this earlier, but DMT, Rick Strausen book. A few more of the aliens one. Here's the Bud Hopkins Intruders. Yeah. He's also got Missing Time. One I was planning on maybe looking into was Jacques Vallée, Dimensions, and he's got this really interesting theories on what aliens are.
Yeah, I like the airship thing with him. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, the airship.
Dolores Cannon, Keepers of the Garden, and Custodians. And then here's Nancy Dennison book, Create a New Reality. That's kind of more for tomorrow. But I didn't really get a lot out of that book, to be honest. Now we're going into Psychoactives. This is Stanislav Grof, and it's called The Cosmic Game. And so, yeah, I wrote psychedelics can elevate consciousness and allow us to see in realms just above ours in frequency, but we probably have entities and dimensions above and below ours feeding off us. And below us, they maybe appear as shadow beings. Above us, I mean, you got all these descriptions of ticks and leeches and octopi, elves, aliens, godhead, goddesses, whatever form they choose to appear as, perhaps. And the other interesting aspect of the psychedelic experience is that it may be inner space as opposed to an outer space. Thus, all the fractals that are seen might explain why one encounters more parasites too. The fractals seem to be more associated with recursive embedded patterns, though I'm sure the universe is holographic and fractal. So I don't know. Just hard to different. They call it as breakthrough, and where they're blasted off into like another dimension.
Yeah, breakthrough experiences. Those are the big ones.
And it's preceded by vibration, and it's most of it's like closed eye visuals. But so the Stanislav Grof. Before we get into DMT, he'd get into like all these psychedelics, hallucinogens, and a lot of LSD and stuff. But he analyzed 4,000 to 6,000 experiences, and in his 98 book, The Cosmic Game, Explorations of the Frontiers of Human Consciousness, he related the account of an experiencer who experienced being one of 4 demiurgic powers. The field of psychedelics, he researched those cases, and he wrote, since the divine play, the cosmic drama, is unimaginable without individual protagonists, without distinct separate entities, the existence of evil is absolutely essential for the creation of the world as we know it. This understanding is in basic agreement with the notion found in some Christian mystical scriptures, according to which the fallen angel Lucifer, as representative of polarities, is seen as a demiurgic figure. He takes humanity on a fantastic journey into the world of matter. Approaching this problem from another perspective, we can say that in the last analysis, evil and suffering are based on a false perception of reality. He says, since the divine play, the cosmic drama, is unimaginable, he says it is essential. I don't know if I agree with that or not, but that's his take on it.
I disagree with it too.
Yeah. So he says the creative play of the demiurges. The insights into the nature and dynamics of the cosmic game do not have to emerge on the level of the supreme creative principle. Gal, a minister who participated in our training program for professionals at the Maryland Psychiatric Research Center, had in her psychedelic session an interesting sequence that portrayed cosmogony as a competitive creative game of 4 demiurgic superhuman entities. Although her experience is very unusual since it involves several demiurgic beings rather than one creative principle, I will include it here. illustrates the exceptional clarity of many of the issues. Anyway, she says, I found myself in a dimension that seemed to lie beyond space and time as we know it. What comes to my mind when I think about it now is the concept of hyperspace used by modern physicists. However, such a technical term would not describe the profound feeling of sacredness, the awesome sense of numinosity associated with my experience. I realized that I was a superhuman being of immense proportions, possibly the one transcended all limitations, or one existed before any limitations were known. I did not have any form, being just pure consciousness with superb intelligence suspended in absolute space. Although there was no source of light there, I cannot say I was in complete darkness. I shared the space with 3 other beings. Although they were purely abstract and amorphous like myself, I could clearly feel their separate presence and communicate with them in a complex telepathic fashion. We amused each other by various brilliant intellectual games. Fireworks and extraordinary ideas were being thrown back and forth. The complexity, intricacy, and level of imagination involved in these games by far surpassed anything known among humans. It was all pure entertainment, since in the form we were, none of it had any practical implications. I have to think in this context about whales who float in the ocean with their enormous brains and are endowed with intelligence. Anyway, she goes on and just talks about how they created this game, and it was just all and they created limitations and rules and laws that would govern the world, as with all games. And just, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting fact that, he researched all these psychedelics, and one of his cases was actually talking about these demiurgic type beings.
That's great.
On to the DMT. So Rick Strassman, he was talking about, parasitic entities are commonly reported in ayahuasca ceremonies, and it's DMT based. And in his book, Spirit Molecule, he noted, I continually feel surprised in seeing how many of our volunteers made contact with them or other beings. At least half did so in one form or another. Research subjects used expressions like entities, beings, aliens, guides, and helpers to describe them. The life forms look like clowns, reptiles, mantises, bees, spiders, cacti, and stick figures. It is still startling to see my written records of comments like, there were these beings, I was being led, they were on me fast. I found this one from Reddit NDE subsection, just like yesterday or today. It's like he was asking if anybody had an NDE, had also done DMT, and what similarities or what they thought of it. Yeah. So person replied and says, so I had an NDE in 2018. It was an awe-inspiring and profound experience. I already had an interest in DMT, but hadn't tried it. But all the descriptions of the DMT trip aligned with my NDE experience. I wanted to experience it again, so I got some DMT and tried it. I tried several tries. It took several tries over a few days to do it properly. It's a pretty wild ride. 3 big hauls on it and off to some strange new world. Ultimately, though, the DMT paled in comparison to my NDE. The NDE was coherent, the patterns are deliberate and meaningful, and everything was hyper HD, whereas the DMT was abstract, random, and dreamlike. The entities that were there felt more like a dreamed up extension of myself than meeting another separate entity. My mind felt like I was lucid dreaming rather than fully awake and rationally aware. I think
that's a great response.
Yeah.
Because that's what it seems like when you read it. You know?
Yeah. He said it was a disappointment. The NDE is far more profound than DMT. Yeah. But then somebody else said, I'll share part of my experiences. Right. I had an NDE in November 2020. I haven't posted my story here yet, but I'll reply to this here now because my NDE and my first DMT experience had striking similarities. I had not done DMT before my NDE. In fact, the first time I did it was almost 11 months later. My DMT trips I've had, they all start out with a tunnel of lights and shapes, the very same tunnel of lights and shapes I went through in my NDE. In my MDE, I remember feeling as if I was 30,000 feet up from the craziest psychedelic carnival, and I could see what I can only describe as rides or portals. And I knew I could fall into any one I wanted to. Well, I saw that very same thing in my first DMT trip, to the point I freaked out and actually thought I was dying again. I met these entities, angels I felt when I was dying. They were so loving and kind and let me know this wasn't my time. I saw those very same angels, my first breakthrough experience. In my DMT trip, they showed me that nothing in this universe is an accident. We all play an integral part in this larger web. NDE wasn't my time, they said, but I needed to know that reality is far more than what we see with our human eyes. They also filled me with so much feelings of love that I came out of the trip crying tears of joy. I felt the same sense of overwhelming love when I woke up in the hospital and could see not only all my spirit guides, but the spirit guides of everyone around me. So I don't know whether to share this or not, but do you have a comment?
No, good. Keep rolling. I think that's up to you. I mean, I'd love to hear it, but it's
they mentioned clowns and gestures and stuff like that, and it's interesting.
That's kind of common, though.
My friend. Well, here's the thing. My friend who encountered the demiurge in his NDE, and he wrote. He said, I'd never heard anything like this before, and I felt ridiculous saying it out loud. But in my NDE days of darkness, I had the distinct memory of there being giant clown-looking beings that were killing and eating people who were outside. It sounds foolish even writing it now, but whatever the giant beings were, they were terrifying. I frequently reinforced the idea to have food and water inside and not to go out in the darkness, as whatever they are that outside will be going after the starving and thirsty masses, as well as predatory humans that will be outside in the time of darkness. Wow. He says there might be within us a subconscious fear of clown-looking beings from our DNA, as our ancestors might have had traumas related to whatever these clown-looking beings are. Maybe why clowns are seen in suits and have oversized shoes. And he said, I didn't see them with colorful clothing. It was extremely dark, though. They were huge, but even as large as they were, they had disproportionately big, bulbous heads. That's why they reminded me of frighteningly huge clown-looking faces. As opposed to non-physical DMT clockwork elves, they were physical beings. Maybe they'd come up from below ground. That's my first thought. But
or assumed physical beings.
Yeah, and the Hopi Indians have rituals where they wear these clown costumes, and
holy shit, you're right.
Yeah. And Frank Waters, in Hopi mythology, he talks about the blue star Kashina, the spirit that will signify the coming and the beginning of the new world by appearing in the form of a blue star. And it's said to be the ninth and final sign before the day of purification, which is described as an apocalypse or a world engulfing cataclysm. Anyway, just interesting aside, I guess.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I just want to thank John Doe really quick for the $5 super chat. John says, one thing that resonated with me on Wayne's website was the person who was able to avoid archons by just teleporting around them. Hilarious.
Yeah, it's a great tactic, man.
It is.
Easy peasy, right?
Yeah.
So
they got nothing on us. They got nothing.
Well, if you're in the moment, you don't think about it. Maybe you're just paralyzed or whatever, but if it's not that. Anyway, so here's an account from a person who had an NDE and later tried DMT. I went to a place I could never explain to anyone. The lights, the present felt, the frequency, just many aspects of the NDE that I've held sacred and personal to me. For many years, I lived in dark place off and on, feeling different and not understanding why. My experience with DMT changed everything for the better. Like you, I went to the exact same place that was at my NDE. I felt the unconditional love and did not want to leave. So there's a few similarities for sure. It's like a non-physicality and telepathic communication with these otherworldly beings. But the major differences between the NDEs and DMTs, DMT experiences seem to contain more geometric patterns, especially fractals, and more alien type beings as opposed to light beings. I mean, they may be the same, but how they perceive them is different.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. So here's a DMT experience that was emailed to me. A reader of mine wrote me and related an experience. He said, a while back, I had some psychedelic experiences that depicted alien farmers who shadowed me around their planet. They showed me some inner workings of life and how we are used as vessels for higher meanings. Death was no different than life, and I could see visual exchanges from one to the other. They were hands-on and explaining and preparing me for my next stage of existence. Maybe that sounds a bit out there, and maybe it was, but it felt profound. In fact, at one point, they drove a probe into my mind and said they removed something so that they could add another thing. When I asked what they installed, they simply told me that it was for long-term. The first one I met was standing in a field behind a fence. It was very tall and lanky. It walked back and forth for a while, sizing me up before it told me that I wasn't ready and told me to do more. I guess do more DMT, I guess, you know. I immediately woke up and knew I had to do more. I did, then was brought right back to it. It took me in and brought me to some others that were equally tall and lanky, gray and emotionless. They put me in a bed that sort of felt like a bobsled, pushed me down a track to where I met with some others who were identical to them, but now is in a lab. They shadowed me around, did the long-term thing, then slid me down a track back to Earth, my consciousness, if you will. I remember specifically that I stood off to the side and watched stars shoot across the landscape from left to right in my vision, and was told that those were space travelers trying to make the transition from Earth to the farms. They were all transitioning, but at the time I was in limbo because I was being shown how the traveling looked from an outside perspective, almost like a college orientation. The only inner workings of life they explained at the time was that life and death were one and the same. Death wasn't anything to be afraid of because basically it was the same as life. We were just assigned jobs. Life was a job on Earth, and after we punch out, we end our shift and report back to these farms. No souls are ever lost after that. We are reassigned. I'm not sure how we are used as vessels. Maybe we are meant to spread some sort of knowledge on Earth, but we have to combat the desensitivity of our existence, which is diluted from living on Earth. Either way, the main thing they did to me before having me slide back into Earth was replacing something in my mind and describing it as long-term. Maybe one day it'll be triggered and I'll know what to do with it. Maybe what I'm supposed to do with it is remember that it happened. I'm not sure. I asked him if they were the 7-foot gray beings or the prey-eating mantis beings, and he replied, they seem to have been a combination. They were definitely at least 7 feet tall, 7 feet in gray, but their proportions were very similar to praying mantis now that I think about it. He says, I definitely know that I was greeted by a farmer. I also know that I hear voices, and when I close my eyes at night, I see a distant light that rushes towards me. And if I'm not scared, I can accept it and watch it engulf me. I'm not sure what happens after that, but I've been much better at letting it get that close. He said, I'm not sure what they were farming. All I could see was empty pasture at first, but when the farmer who first greeted me decided I was ready to go further, it grabbed my hand and I transcended from the farm into some weird lab-like room. I was strapped inside some tube-shaped bed. There were a bunch of these aliens in the room, and that's when they probed into my forehead and said long-term. Anyway, yeah.
Long-term, that's creepy. That's a creepy ending.
Well, yeah, it's not even the end of it. So, anyway, he just
creepy
says,
part, I guess.
Yeah. I've heard those whispers because it feels like your mind is playing tricks on you. From the DMT Nexus website, somebody said after
Good
several
site.
more, yeah,
I like that site a lot.
Yeah, and there's another Shroomery is another good one too.
Oh, Shroomery.org, yeah, that's a great one.
After several more adventures, I've gotten rid of the fearful aspect of it. Now it's just a repetition of an alien encounter telling me the world I live in is a Matrix-type simulation. I'm trying my best to get past this conclusion and venture further into the available experience. While this was happening, I was feeling so frightened of these entities controlling reality. This was a program being run to upgrade that is it, and these alien entities were in control, waving and letting me in on the secret. I came back to live out this natural life, but I know after this experience I must come to terms with my non-existence and to return home for good, not being sucked into this game again.
Yeah.
Here's a YouTube user named Tripwit, and it's a DMT report. And he says, this is about an experience I had on DMT, my very first experience. As soon as I close my eyes, what I've been calling machine elves come up to me. These entities basically look like, the only way I can describe it is metal smoke or metallic smoke, like they would have really sharp edges and they'd be still and solid for a moment like this metal form. And then they'd just shift. The whole body would just change around and move like smoke, like gas, and then take a totally new form. They started basically...
like that just rings fake to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not the experience, but the entity. You know, I mean, it feels very programmed. I don't know.
Yeah. He said they started basically saying some things which I can't repeat on camera, otherwise I'll sound like a crazy man. But it was just so profound, I think so factual, and make more sense than anything else has before. So they started telling me these things, these ultra deep secrets. And as they're telling me these things, I feel a shift of awareness happening where I'm losing my sense of myself big time. And they're taking me to a deeper and deeper place just by talking to me. I can't really remember what happened then, but basically at some point I think I went through a tunnel because I remember coming out of the tunnel. He says, this is an ego death moment. And he said, basically, I became white light forever and ever. And he said, it seemed like I zoomed out from everything, from all the galaxies, just like you kept zooming out and out and out, going in. And eventually you get to the source, which is white light. And he says, they've told me that this white light is, and he said, they told me that this white light is this beam that's shot through inside the matrix. And he says, They just showed me this effing matrix, and it showed me that this white light is basically consciousness or a signal being shot through the matrix, connecting me and all other lives of the past, present, and future, parallel lives that are non-physical. We're connected by this white light, and that's apparently what I saw and became on DMT, and it's where we all go when we die. Not me, man. I was gone for billions and trillions of years, and I could feel how long I was gone for. I was connected to everything. A blind person had an experience with DMT at the forums on shroomery.org, and he said, my buddy Cody was driven up here for Christmas by his brother yesterday. He's congenitally blind from birth. His visual cortex is completely intact, but he just doesn't have eyes, so he should be able to have a DMT experience. He's never had any true psychedelics before today. Anyway, he says when his last hit, his eyes open, not just open, they shot wide open. He leaned onto his knees out of his chair. How could he even move? I'm not sure, but he started sobbing. He cried for about 7 minutes. As suspected, he cannot say anything but one word about the experience. All he can say with sobbing tears is so beautiful, I don't. It's just so beautiful. He said this about 10 hours ago. He's still asking me if that is what he's seeing. How do I respond to that? He can't describe what it is he saw, but he saw, and he's been blind from birth. Isn't that amazing?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like those those NDEs that we hear about, where they don't have, they're blind and they can see clearly during a near-death experience. And, and it's like the first time for some of them that they've seen too.
I know. Mm-hmm. Here's the one that you're having me go out and look at. It's a man tries DMT for the first time.
Yeah.
And he said everything's interconnected. Oh my God, it's all right there. That's such a beautiful process. I'll tell you what's really interesting is the conversion when you become a human and forget. That's deceptive as hell. It really works. It really freaking works. You forget everything. It's hard. It's hard to be a human. That's pretty. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. That
was a big one. And, I love that one.
Yeah,
that is a great. I'll pop up a link for anyone interested in checking that out.
And I saw a documentary way back on salvia. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but it's a psychoactive plant. Yeah. The person tried it a few times and he came to the starting conclusion. He said, have you ever seen that episode of South Park where they found out that Earth was a reality TV show and that extraterrestrials were watching it across the universe? This is basically how my trip was. By the way, I've never even saw that episode until recently. That was interesting. Another mushroom experience from shroomery.org. It said, it really felt as if I was on a stretcher in a grass field with lights over me that now felt like flashlights with dark, shadowy entities around me. The archons knew my consciousness was coming into their frequency. This entire time, I felt as if someone or something was looking at me from all directions, but never directly. It was in my peripheral vision and awareness that I felt this presence of an eye looking at me as a dark eye lingers in the tree line. The eye represented by the Illuminati, the archonic control grid realm itself. I felt the eye presence in my peripheral vision. As I turned to look towards it, would shift into my peripheral, and this happened any direction I would look. I was told it to please don't hurt me. I come in peace, as my breathing was very shallow and heavy. The more shallow the breath, the more intense the feelings and visuals. They feed on fear, depression, anger, sadness, low frequency emotions. They've been feeding from my soul for a very long time. He says, looking back, after my research, I need to find empowerment through knowledge, and I found it through Gnosticism to explain the true nature of reality and know how to combat the demiurge. I kept repeating a phrase to myself that completely embodies my awareness today. It is a phrase that which the lesson was taught in my experience. Our existence in everyday life is truly a state of mind. It's a state of being or consciousness. Through knowledge, we find empowerment. Now I'll do my best to increase my spiritual frequency as high as I can get it, so when my soul leaves this biological mind-body machine, I can face these demons and tell them who I am and release myself from their reincarnation program and truly reach nirvana, the infinite love of the thundering silence. The void, end quote. So here's another one from Shroomery. High frequencies drift in and out of earshot, panning across the spectrum, heavily laced with supernatural reverb, insect chattering, and the general feeling of some obtuse, shadowy machine starting up, beginning to meld with me. It is insect and alien, and yet still machine-like. Intense physical churning and rolling as always. And out of nowhere, something tentacles of some cosmic inspector grasp me, flowing towards and into me. Can actually see them under reality and feel them as they latch on. It's almost as if they're always there, an integral part of true experience, normally ignored by the reducing valve of the senses. Anyway, he goes on. It's I wanted to do the DMT one after the NDE because there's similarities there, and then I was going to go to the aliens and kind of wrap it all up, but I wasn't sure we're going to have time to get to this, so I threw it at the end. So another one from DMT Nexus, he says, as I watched our universe being folded into a storage drum as nothing more than a piece of information or the results of tests, another being walked by chuckled at me in my amazement upon realizing this information. This is where things got very intense, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, but can recall bits and pieces. A being then told me I was living in a computer simulation. The entire purpose of the simulation was a probability experiment to see which pieces I would choose, or something like that. The whole universe had been created for no reason other than this, to be a piece of information. We are a scientific experiment created by a civilization whose only goal is the pursuit of knowledge. As my brain scrambled to counter this argument, they again show me equations, this time bigger than the first, and these equations prove to me this truth. The words, "this is a mathematical fact," were spoken, then every possible variation has been computed. And again, I could see, feel, and understand the truth in these statements. Yeah, he doesn't know if there's any truth to any of that, but it's... and then we're almost getting toward the end here. We're actually making progress. A reader of mine wrote me and related an experience while using DMT. He said, a while back I had... Okay, that was the one I wrote earlier about the alien farmers, I think. Yeah, so... He said, while trying to astral project, I ended up lucid dreaming. I wasn't quite lucid, more like I knew I had to do something. My main reason why I was trying to astral project was to discover more about this matrix, or whatever it turns out to be. So while in a dream, I was trying really hard to get myself to fly up into space. It's like I knew something was up there and I had to get to it. When I flew all the way into space, I ended up landing on an object. I felt like this is what I was looking for, and I'd finally gotten to it. Everything was extremely vivid and clear. I could see the sun, planets, and all looked extremely real. The device I had landed on, the part on which I was standing, was made of iron beams, which were constructed very similarly to those I sent in the picture. However, it was the shape of a square. There were two parts that were rotating around it. They had copper in them. I saw some smaller parts of similar shape rotating along with them. Try to draw them sometimes. Also, when I touched one of the beams with my hands, a thought came across my mind. This is used to charge something way more, something a whole lot bigger than expected on a whole new scale. Without a doubt, it was orbiting Earth, that I am certain. I remember shouting, "Moon is the Matrix," once in my dream. Also, every other time I had a vivid dream, a device machine was present, like when I ended up going to the farms. There was the white train-like machine. So, some interesting stuff.
All fake. Not all fake,
yeah.
but...
Yeah, so there's this more
case.
from DMT Nexus about, entities and hunters and, feeding, like farms, that kind of stuff, negative emotions, that kind of stuff. But parasites, I've experienced these parasites, these archons, as I've come to learn they are. So yeah, it's just basically a lot of that. I mean, I know there's more that people see Aztec deities, and I'm sure there's some very, very positive ones too. I wish I had time to have included more of those, but
yeah, no, that's cool. There was a person I ran across in a comment section, and I started talking to her a little bit back and forth. She talked about how her son went to where was it? Somewhere down in Mexico. One of the pyramid areas, smaller pyramids, and he went there just kind of alone on a whim, and went to the top, usually where they would be sacrificing people back in the day, and walked down to the bottom of the pyramid, off into the woods, and then told his mom that he basically walked into a completely different reality. Everything around him changed. No drugs, nothing. Just was there. Nothing in his system. And everything changed around him. It was like he was transported back in time. And there were, I guess we could call them like tribes of elders and what have you. And he was really freaked out, kind of hiding, but also kind of curious. And then he walked back towards the pyramid, and then boom, reality shifted back to his normal state. So make of that what you will.
Yeah, I personally don't advocate using DMT or psychedelics to try to gain knowledge about the truth of all being. I mean,
I don't think you're going to really get much if you're looking for the truth. I mean, you'll get an insight. Like if you've never experienced something like that, it's interesting for sure.
Some people claim that it's the vine of the dead and that stuff, and that it's Aya was like Mother Earth, and that's who's actually talking to you as the plants or Earth.
Yeah, I don't buy into that shit.
Just to mention it, there's an Aborigine Dreamtime healer named Steve Richards, and he talks about life being a game, but he said, he who enters the game of another is subject to the laws of the game. So that's like he's talking about, like when people go through this tunnel to be in this DMT realm, you're taking the hit and you're breaking through, you're going through the tunnel and you're in another realm. He says, he who enters the game of another is subject to the laws of their game.
Yeah,
he also talks about he also talks about feeding thought forms, which become life forms, which become entities. He teaches we have both internal and external entities, and external entities include draconians, reptilians, gargoyles, winged serpents, aliens, and other forms of dimensional beings. And an internal entity is something we have created. So, for example, if I had a belief of not being good enough, that starts out as a thought. Over time, if this thought is continually fed, it becomes a thought form, and everything has the right to exist. The thought form over time eventually, therefore, becomes a life form in its own right, and thus becoming an internal entity. And so anyway, it's just huge. Something that he was saying that the ayahuasca, this vine is very clever and insidious, and it because like a vine goes out and it strangles all the life around us anyway. So
good point. I like that association with it. And I mean, thought forms are dangerous as hell. And back when I was younger, I was creating them without even knowing it. And then you realize later on what the hell you were doing, and that these things exist. And I mean, I've talked to quite a few people who experience the same, but you just don't know they exist. So you kind of run into this problem, and it's interfering with your life, and you're just unaware. I mean, it's literally created by us. I mean, it's nuts, totally crazy,
isn't it? Though, yeah.
But so anyway, you know what, Wayne? The only reason it's crazy is because we weren't taught about it. We weren't taught. We didn't know that these things existed either. So, I mean, it's
I would more encourage just like meditative experiences, going inward, and maybe even doing dream journals and dream yoga and stuff like that, instead of taking some psychoactive type. I don't know, it's just me. I'm sure you can get some valuable stuff out of it, but you got to be careful with it. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, I think having the right mindset is really, really important if you're going to do it.
Yes, exactly. They talk about the setting. The perfect setting. And you're right. If you have spiritual intentions, then yes, your intention, maybe perhaps you can have a very good experience, I guess. I don't know. I have never dabbled in it myself.
I've never done DMT. I've done LSD and mushrooms, but I mean, it's been years. So, I mean.
Well, wasn't Francis Crick, the guy that invented DNA, supposedly it was inspired by an LSD experience where he could see the DNA or the molecules at the very deep level of like a puddle of water or something like that.
You're talking about the founder of DNA, or
the guy that I think he discovered the DNA structure, or I believe.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
people can look it up on Wikipedia. I mean, maybe my memory is completely wrong, but I think his name was Francis Crick.
Okay,
and it was supposedly, from what I remember, inspired by LSD. So,
right on.
Obviously there can be some value if it's done in the right way.
Sure.
I'm not saying that there's nothing positive that can come from it.
Don't. I just don't think it should ever
it's
be.
It's not something to be toyed with.
Yeah, no. It's
for recreation. You don't want to do it as a recreation.
No.
At least in my opinion, you don't want to do it as a recreational thing. No. Maybe something like mushrooms, possibly if it's a spiritual setting, and you got to be careful. With the DMT, like if you go off to the Amazon or something, they got these shamans and stuff, and they're going to help you. I mean, some of them I've heard that they can like put darts in you. I mean, you got to know who they're dealing with. Yeah. They can take advantage of people too.
Yeah, there are horror stories that have come out and stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's good to, if you're going to do it, first make sure whatever the hell if you're getting DMT, I mean, if you can somehow do a purity test. I mean, there are tests out there where you can kind of see what you're getting, see if it's mixed or cut with anything that's dangerous or that's not pure.
David Icke did it, and he wrote a whole book and said that he was told that everything is love and all else is illusion, basically, right? It's like,
well, I mean that's what you'd expect from controlled opposition, I guess.
I'm not going to go that far, but I mean, maybe he was being manipulated by the entities that. But it's very just like an NDE'S or anything else. It's so convincing to the person because
Well, I mean, it's a total shift. Like I remember one of my closest friends back in the day, we took, I don't know what it was, like 4 hits of acid, and it was a perfect summer night. And we just, back in the day when you had a boombox, and we had Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and we just plopped it on the ground and laid on the pavement of the driveway and looked up at the clear night sky, and we just blasted off. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, because it's when you first do it, you realize that there's just this whole layer of reality around you that you didn't even know existed if it's your first time. And then I did it with the wall, and I kind of
obviously Pink Floyd. Somebody in there, like Roger Waters, whoever wrote the lyrics, they have a song that's got the word gnome, and on the Piper at the Gates of Dawn album, they talk about a gnome.
Yeah, it's
I think it's called the Gnome.
Yeah,
gnome. I think it's called the Gnome. Yeah.
And that album's nuts.
Grimble and grumble, and the little gnomes stay in their homes, eating, sleep. Yeah, so obviously. Yeah, I don't know. It could have been DMT related. I don't know. Or maybe they just saw a gnome like you did. It's just altered state of consciousness. They were in like another realm, when they experienced it, I guess. So.
Yeah.
There you go. That's all I have. 9 hours later.
Oh wow! So
sorry, I couldn't go into more detail for you.
Yeah, geez, Wayne. Geez, you're such a short interview.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody got any quick questions? Feel free to drop them in really quick. We'll hang around for maybe 4 or 5 minutes, 10 minutes at most. And but otherwise, tomorrow, just to remind everybody, we have Wayne coming back.
I don't think it's going to be 8 hours or anything tomorrow. It's not going to be.
Yeah. Tomorrow's episode, number 7, and
it'll probably only be about 7.5.
Yeah, so we'll shorten it a little bit this time. Yeah, be a little merciful. So yeah, episode 7 is Afterlife Solutions and Possible Alternatives. Some of the things we'll touch upon are deprogram and detach, intention and willpower, sovereignty and liberation, and more. And then Wayne again comes back next Saturday on the 26th, which will be a week from, well, I guess yesterday. That's episode 8. And it'll be a question and answer roundtable discussion. You can call in and join. We'll also take questions and comments from the live YouTube text chat. And just, if you want, discuss the series of anything you want to bring up throughout the things that we've covered here. All right, so
what kind of reactions have we had in the chat? Have you been?
I've been trying to. I mean, honestly, it's
kind of hard to have a conversation.
It is,
and still monitor.
Yeah, I'm really I have difficult concentrating on some things. So that's okay. So let's see what we got here.
I thought if I went long enough, I could avoid the questions.
Yeah.
He'll be so tired.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we could wrap it up, man. We've been going for a long time.
I'm just kidding. It's fine.
Let's see if
there are some good ones in there.
Yeah, just check like the last couple pages here, see if there's anything here.
On point 3, point A, point 1, dash 4.
You said this.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Elaborate on that. Let's see. Okay, Peter says, since I was a very young kid, I remember telling my mom that I was not the person or label I was given. That's interesting. Bo responds to Peter saying, belief systems are incredibly difficult to break. Most people do not have the ability to even put their awareness into it. Yeah, that is so true. Conscious Soul says, I always knew I didn't belong here. I always knew something was very wrong with this place. That's exactly same here. Yeah, I mean, the farthest I can have memory for is I'm in the same boat with you. It's just, but I could never put my finger on it. Still don't, to some extent. Right. Ivan Kim, good to see you. Hope you're doing well, man. Ivan says, ayahuasca shows the way, freedom or control, your choice. Whether you go towards the light after death or stay in the dark, if you don't understand it's about freedom, you'll come back here. Fair enough. Everyone's got to do their thing. Basically, the only thing I was saying is, if you're going to do ayahuasca, DMT, or any sort of psychedelic, just make sure you're in the right setting. That's all that really matters. Just make sure you're
the right intention.
Yeah, intention and setting.
And with setting, you need to have somebody there with you, is what they say too.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Take care of you.
Yeah.
Make sure you don't freak out.
I mean, especially with the DMT. I mean, if you're smoking it, I know there's been people who've gotten burned and hurt because they're holding on to the pipe and then they drop it because they're alone. And, and DMT is so short. It's like, 20 minutes or something. I've never even done it. I would like to, but again, optimal conditions, having had experience with mushrooms.
I would never say never, but I just don't see a need to do it.
Yeah. I'd like to try it. I would, but again, it's all about kind of optimizing the conditions and the mindset and the intention. So the way I see it is if it comes to me at some point, great. If not, then whatever. Peter says, I used to have persistent thought in my mind that felt like we were an enemy to some kind of hierarchical species, and that they silence us by sending us in body trap to get rid of us. Well, I mean, in many ways, that's kind of true. Eli says, I'd like to do DMT with FC. I'd like to do it with you, Eli. It's always good to see you, brother. Hope you're doing well.
Actually, there's a different Pink Floyd song I think I was trying to think of. There's something like the something that say, I mean, I can't remember the name of it. It's an early Pink Floyd, and I'm not really into the early stuff. But there was like another... I can't think of it. I don't think the gnome was I don't think the gnome was actually the one I was thinking of. There was like a different one. Yeah.
Well, no, that's one though.
Maybe that's part of the lyrics.
Yeah, no. Well, I think it actually is called Gnome. I like you mentioned earlier. I'm pretty sure. I mean, a little gnome came to play or something like that. I don't know. I know it was a Sid Barrett song. Eli says, Ike did. What was it? DMT at the Freemason Lodge? Yeah, okay. I didn't even know that. Interesting.
It is interesting.
Not surprising, though. But that's really weird. I mean, if you're going to do it, I mean, really, you're going to go to the lodge and do it? Okay. I don't know. I never heard that. Conscious Soul says, I don't want to do DMT. Already see and feel things around me. I'm an empath. I feel it would be overwhelming. Maybe shrooms, small amount. Yeah, I think, I mean, shrooms are very, you do a low dose of shrooms, it's enjoyable. You can, a little bit of the world is revealed around you, or the realm is revealed around you. Like you realize you're more than your physical body, and that there's things around us that we just can't perceive in our normal state. So, I mean, low dose shrooms, nothing wrong with that. I mean, there are people, actually a few people who listen to the channel, they're good friends, Night Sky and Simon, and they've been microdosing for a few months, but that's like really, really small doses. And they've been reporting really, really good benefits out of it. So, Iman Kim says, of all people, you're dissing some you never experienced. You're losing the way. I'm not dissing anything. I'm just talking about my preference. All I'm saying is...
Let's talk about the DMT.
I would imagine that's what he's talking about.
You're not saying that. I'm saying that.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you're going to do it, just to have optimal conditions.
Are they really going to leave just because of one thing that they don't agree with? I mean, out of like 1,000 different... I mean, whatever. People are going to be that... I don't...
I mean, we're not dissing anything. We're just saying...
People can't have differences of opinion. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll learn that. Oh, my God, I really should have been... I mean, I'm not saying I know everything or anything like that.
I mean, for me, and I would think you, Wayne, it's just personal choice. That's it. It's not. There's nothing wrong with it. I know a lot of people have benefited from it, but for me, like if I know ayahuasca is intense. I don't think I could ever do ayahuasca, I've had the opportunity offered to me actually within the last couple of months.
And you have to prepare yourself, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you're drinking the potion, I mean, you're throwing up. You got to get all the impurities out of your system. You got to fast and all that kind of stuff. I think before you even you got to treat it with respect and reverence, and
I'd much rather
like a sacred ceremony.
Yeah, and a very, very Lindley. I just want to say thank you out there. Lindley offered to pay for my experience at an ayahuasca church that I'm not far from, and I'll be the first to admit I don't have the balls to do it. I mean, I did lots of LSD and heavy dose mushrooms way 20 plus years ago, and psychedelics is just very hard for I had 7 bad trips in a row with LSD, and I think there was like 1 mushroom trip right after that, and I was like, I'm done. I mean, like, it just wasn't enjoyable anymore. But I do want to try DMT because 20 minutes fine, but 4 hours and shitting and puking and all this preparation with ayahuasca. I think it's just I know myself and psychedelics, and I just don't want to put myself out there that much. But.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this shirt, which is designed by Alex Gray, his whole stuff was inspired by DMT experience. He actually has a video on YouTube where he talks about it and his DMT experience, and how a lot of his work is DMT inspired. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, too. Yeah, the artwork and he
worked with
stuff.
The band Tool. Yeah, they worked with it. And one of the videos he did was Vicarious, which talks about these ticks and leeches. I mean, it shows ticks and leeches and stuff. And it's like they're basically saying, but we live vicariously through you, and they get off on destruction and all that kind of stuff. It's like much better you than us kind of thing, So anyways, if you want to call that positive, then fine.
Conscious Soul says, thank you, FC and Wayne. I love the long streams. Okay. You're welcome. Someone says, so do we live in a matrix? You want to take that one? I think they know my opinion on that.
Have they not listened to the show for the last 8 hours? I would say yes. Right now we're in the matrix, sure.
Yeah. And it seems to extend its 30 claws out into the astral. That's the that's the crazy part about all of it. It's I don't know. Chain Minds Asylum says paper or plastic.
Marianne or Ginger? Gotta go with Marianne on that
one. Peter says, I think Human 2.0 is going to be the perfect energy generator that will fall in the soul trap without any questioning. Yeah, that's what it seems like. What do you think, Wayne? Transhumanism?
Pushing that whole metaverse type stuff.
Metaverse,
virtual realities. They've already created one where like you can actually have avatars and stuff, and it's definitely headed that way. And Musk seems involved in a lot of that stuff with the chips and Neuralink, all that deal.
He's the fake savior. Xavier says salvia will put you in another world for a short amount of time too. It's very much like DMT, a bit scary in its differentness. Yeah, I've never tried salvia. I had a friend who did it quite a bit.
I just want to say I am nowhere near any kind of expert on psychedelics. Obviously, I mean, I've never even tried one. I'm just part of my it kind of ties into my research. So I went out there and found experiences, and I'm just reporting some of what I like. I'd like to report like a lot of positive ones. Maybe next time or something we get together at some point. I'll try to find some. You know, if anybody knows of any, send them to me. But I don't try to come across as being like, I don't know, closed-minded or negative or anything.
No, dude, do you. Whatever you feels right for you. I mean,
and maybe I need to expand my awareness. I don't know everything. I'm just
the way
it's not my forte. That area is not my forte. Okay.
I mean, I would say if you're ever going to try anything, start with mushrooms, low dose mushrooms. That's it.
I will say I do like Pink Floyd's music, and the Grateful Dead weren't bad either. Maybe there's some hope for me yet there.
Well, we're in the same boat with that. Okay, let's see.
I like tie-dye shirts. Does that count?
Yeah, of course. You're on your way with that. You're halfway there.
I don't put flowers in my hair. I mean, now I probably think I'm mocking and making fun of it all.
No, we're just having fun, man. It's cool.
Yeah.
Hagrid says, I don't think I could sign up for anything longer than 15 minutes. Laugh out loud. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel about DMT, or like the only two things I would probably try right now if they were in front of me and offered. I mean, first off, I would still kind of make sure the setting was proper, but if someone came right now and offered me DMT or mushrooms, I would probably do it, but
what's at the door?
I mean, but ayahuasca, oof, I mean that seems like some serious business. But anyone who wants to do it, go for it. I just don't want to puke and shit my brains out and
I've heard experiences. I don't know if it's DMT, but I've heard experiences where people feel like they're trapped for an eternity in their experience, and they like sink into their couch or their chair. They feel. Have you ever read these experiences?
Well, yeah, some
trapped, like they felt like it'll never end. And
well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people feel like they go through like a rebirth cycle too. It's like a NDE. I mean, it could be great. I mean, they can show you the positives, the negatives.
I'd be curious to try it once. Have a good intention, a good setting, just to see if I get something like what David got, like some message. But I mean, I don't want some external entity telling me what the truth is. I mean, I don't know. Is it external or is it internal? I don't know. That's why meditation appeals more to me, or dream work. It's my own personal preference. So.
Chain Minds of Sound says, I'll just take Terrence McKenna's word for it.
Yeah. And some people say it's a shortcut, right? And
I think
plus there's that whole thing that you were talking about with like the music industry, and not Tavistock, but Laurel Canyon and stuff like that. And
Canyon,
a lot of those, the Doors and somebody. It seems like there might have been like the CIA, somebody might have been behind that whole movement. And,
it sure seems like it.
So it's like, really, is it did it have a positive
well, I mean, kind of
goal,
what you see is how they break music genres into decade periods. Like you have various periods of music, and they last about a decade, maybe a few years plus, few years minus, but it's usually about 10-year cycles. And I mean, the rationale for the whole peace and love movement was that, you know, they were going gangbusters in Vietnam, and that was kind of the cover for it, to make people more pacified and peace and love. You know, they're not going to necessarily.
And then they kind of torpedoed the whole thing somehow.
I mean,
self-destructed.
Who knows? Let's see. Peter says, 2 months ago, I went out of my body and I saw a golden luminescent shape-shifting spaceship, and a kind of glowing golden reptilian came straight at me and observed me like he was curious. Ooh. Wow.
That seems consistent with
some
stuff
we're talking about.
Those
reading or hearing those
confirmation.
The abduction things or whatever. It's just like they come up and scare the hell out of someone.
Yeah, you know, I'm sorry I'm not on here saying, oh, the aliens are here to save us and they're brotherly love, and it's the Pleiadians are so wonderful, and the Nord, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, I just don't trust.
No. I went through I went through a huge phase like that, and I never thought aliens were going to save us, but I still thought there were like good ones and bad ones. Now I'm just
there may be some good ones.
There may be.
There can't be.
I mean, I don't necessarily think that, you know, our relatives who may come and visit us after they die, or close friends, or whatever scenario is, or any of these beings that, you know, we may have connected with while here and had a relationship, and then they pass, and then we kind of get these communications. I don't think they're all necessarily bad, but they're still within the matrix, and they don't realize that they're still in the matrix, and they're just lost. So, and that's just my view on it, and I'm just, you know,
I'm all about personal responsibility and not trusting or having faith in something I don't know which way it is. So it's like, to me, that it just seems better to manifest your own, and then I'm to blame if something goes wrong. And like the guy said, you can undo it. I mean, hopefully, these are just, you know,
that's what it's all about. Taking control of your own destiny.
I should have said at the very beginning, it's like, I do not know the truth. It's just take everything with a grain of salt. This is my opinions, and I'm not saying I know this is the truth. I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything. And it's just speculation, I guess, based on evidence. But that's better. That's better than faith. That's better than blind faith. You know?
Okay, Eban says ayahuasca's 4 to 6 hours will feel either like an hour or eternity, depending on your lesson. Fear is a form of control. It is what keeps everyone coming back here. Yeah, well, fear, any sort of attachment, fear, love, hate. I mean, revenge. I mean, everything in between, on both ends of the scale. It just depends what it is. It just depends on the individual.
So, I mean, I'm just sharing all this evidence. And if somebody out there is more enlightened and knows more than me, and they go, oh, well, see, here's where he's wrong. Okay, fine. Good for you. You're better than me. And then, you know, maybe it's in due time. Eventually I'll learn it too. I'm not saying that I know it and you ought to do this. You got to do this kind of thing, or else, you know, I'm just trying to be realistic and.
Well, and you also got to do whatever you got to do for you, and we each got to do whatever we want to do for ourselves. It's, again, not talking shit. It just is what it is. Personal preference. Let's see. All right, I think. Let's see if there's any more. Just maybe one more. T says, wow, still alive, yes. But we're about to wrap it up.
Well, we start the other show in about an hour now, don't we?
Yeah, we'll see you in a few hours. All right, I think we'll leave it at that. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wayne, for hanging in there, my friend. And I'll see you in about, 12 and a half hours, something like that?
Something like that, yeah. Sounds good.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much. Later. Much blessings, and we'll see you soon. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's been great. heck of a show, and appreciate you all hanging in there. And yeah, okay, I don't think I have much more to say. I'm pretty exhausted. Okay, so I will work on the timestamps for anyone that maybe just got here and put those up over the next 24 to 48 hours. Probably be on Monday, to be honest. It's going to take a while for the video to process on YouTube's end because this is a long one. And we will see each other, or see some of you, in about 12 and a half hours when Wayne comes on for the next installment, which will be Afterlife, what is it, solutions and possible alternatives. So there is a link already under the home page of the channel for anyone interested in setting a reminder. Just as a warning, I still get some messages or comments from a few of you out there who say you're not getting live stream notifications. I would suggest making sure that the bell is selected to all. Otherwise, it's kind of hit or miss when you'll get it. And even if you have it set up, it still may not come through. So it might be good to set a calendar reminder if you really want, and your phone if you want to definitely be present for when we're live. And I have 2 backup channels on YouTube. And oh, don't forget to go to Wayne's website, trickedbythelight.com. That's trickedbythelight.com. And you can find a link in the description tab. And I also put the mailing address if anyone wants to send a mail. A few of you have been asking over the last couple of years, so that's up there as well. If you don't see it, just refresh it and hit the description tab, and it should appear below the membership link, I believe. And then there's Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Odyssey, where I do exclusive live streams, and then there is DLive, where I will do platform exclusive live streams sometime in the future. And there is a website coming where there's going to be resources and a members section, and it's going to be kind of an area where more community driven, like a chat thing and a forum. So it's all slowly but surely being worked on, and I'm hoping within the next few months, month or two, it'll come out and we'll have a area to chill at. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, over 9 hours. What the hell? Yeah, all right, my friends, I will see you soon. Thank you again, and look forward to seeing you maybe later today, if you do.